Want to get it off your chest? You're in the right place. They accuse this show of being run by boobs. Well, let me tell you about us boobs. We're real and we're spectacular. Want politics and fun sprinkled with a lot of laughs? Heard in every state in the Union and 1,000 cities around the world. We just finished 17 years of broadcast excellence. Now in our 18th year. The Dave Weinbaum Show is streaming live all over the world.
It's really zoomed in. Good morning, JP. Wow. Okay, let me move this camera. Can I do that?
Absolutely.
Okay. That's at least it'll be centered.
Yeah, that way you got a view. Yep.
Okay.
Bill Hardwick live in person, right? There you go.
Yeah, where's the can we get this let the people be heard, the studio audience? Go ahead. Can we play the Thank you guys. Thank you. I really appreciate that. People don't realize how difficult it is to everywhere you go there's a group of people like that. Clapping. I think that, and Mark, they describe it as the crowd thronged him. That's the kind of situation that you have. There's just people and they're excited about wherever we go. So I'm not Dave Weinbaum, in case you haven't realized that. I'm Bill Hardwick, and I'm, the lesser of the lesser of the two of us. This is Dave's show, and Dave's out today, and I'm just going to cover and talk to you guys about kind of what's going on, I think, in Missouri politics. We got some guests lined up. We got some interesting topics to talk about. If people want to call in, is there a number, JP, people can call in?
Yeah, we're just using my cell phone number with Dave being out. So I'm going to put the number up here that you can call. And, again, our rule is don't come on here swearing at us and all that. Even if you don't agree with us, that's fine. We can have a healthy debate, but we're not going to get into like being cursed at, name calling, that kind of thing like that. If you can be civil, but even if you disagree and have a conversation, let's have a conversation.
Yeah, I think that's right. I definitely respect the First Amendment right to say whatever you want to say about, the government or politics, and people got a right to do that. But I do think that we're in an era where people feel like it's okay to say hateful things. People feel like it's okay to swear at people and to call names and to attack people personally. And Facebook and Twitter done a lot of that, I think, where you can go online, you can say whatever. And I get that. I get that all the time, by the way. I get somebody who, will cuss at me and it's all F-bombs on Facebook. And then when I see them, they're super nice to my face, well, Bill, you're a great guy. Yeah. And I'm kind of like, I feel like social media has really empowered people not to have manners. But the founding fathers, I think that they envisioned a republic like that, where you had freedom, where you had your freedom of speech and religion couldn't be censored by the government, but then we would govern ourselves. We'd have self-government, that we have, manners and civility and social contract and mores. And the way we govern ourselves is what allows us to have freedom. People don't talk about that a lot. That if you want the government not to have total control, then you've got to be in control of yourself as a person. And that means that we, in the forum of ideas and debate, we let people talk and let people give their point of view, and we take our time and take our turns. And I think that's important, part of our civil discourse. Last night I was in Mansfield, Missouri, Wright County. Have you ever been to Wright County, Missouri, JP?
I have, but it's been a little while. I've passed through there a number of times.
Yeah. It's beautiful country.
Yeah.
In the Senate district, there are a lot of beautiful counties. I mean, Marys County is really beautiful with the rolling hills and the hayfields and stuff like that, the farms out there. And Wright County is really beautiful too. The one thing I would say that if I get elected, I want to help Wright County with is there's almost no cell service down there. And for somebody like me, I'm returning phone calls when I'm on the road. It's just the next call, next call, next call, right?
Yeah.
And or I'm listening to music, I guess I'll say that I do that too. I like to jam out. I like to listen to Spirit FM. But if I'm not doing that, then I'm calling people. I'm trying to call people back as best I can. And Wright County really is in need of more cell service and broadband. So if I get elected, that'll be a big priority for them. But we went down there last night, and they had a Senate candidate for them. And they have in Wright County, they also have the county commissioners running, and they have an associate circuit judge contested primary too. So they had all the Senate candidates there last night. Myself, Dawn Hanna, and Virginia Stobbs, the Democratic candidate. And it was they did it different. They sequestered us back in a room where they we couldn't see what the other people were answering. So one at a time, they came out to the auditorium, kind of like you come out, what there's a crowd, and then they ask these questions. So to this moment, I still don't know what the other folks answered, but since it's since it's over recorded, they had to introduce yourself. That was good. And I always stumble on that question. The question for me is hard, and I've done interviews here, on the radio here. Lebanon, Wright County, Jeff City, did the NPR interview earlier this week. The question that's always tough for me is tell us about yourself. Mm-hmm. Not because I don't think I have a lot of interesting things to tell about myself, but because I actually don't like talking about myself. I feel like I don't think I'm that interesting to talk about. So the parts like, who are you? I want to get to the issues as quickly as I can, how I help people, but I've always been uncomfortable talking about myself. But on the other hand, I feel like if people knew everything that happened in my life, nobody would believe it.
Right.
It's just a kind of incredible kind of story. But so we did that, talked about myself. I was born here in Rolla, grew up in Dixon High School, joined the National Guard when I was 17, after 9/11, went to basic training, that paid for my college, came back here, went to engineer school. Teresa and I had Alora. Alora was being born. I went to Iraq, and that was kind of what Kelly Parker. Do you see that from Salem, his post he made about that?
I saw something about that, but didn't get to read it entirely.
He made a post about our time there, which I did not put him up to it.
Yeah.
But he posted that, and it was really moving. It kind of like reminded me of that year and a half or whatever, that time period of my life when Alora was born and I was gone, and just kind of like going through our, we went through it in Solder City. And that was a real nice post. And that's one thing that's cool about this campaign too. People who I served with that I haven't talked to for 10 years, 20 years, 5 years, some years in some cases, you see them like they're coming forward. They're on my links or they're on my comments saying, this guy's a great guy. I served with them. And I like them people. I'm like, I haven't talked to that guy for 10 years, know? And that at least feels like I did something right.
Obviously felt compelled.
Yeah.
To come forward.
It felt compelled to be like, he's a good leader kind of thing. So I appreciate that. But anyways, we had that forum. And then they had the three questions they asked us in the middle are, if Amendment, and when JJ comes on, let me know, and we'll transition to him. But if Amendment 5 passes, how would you implement it? That was the first question. So what I said was, and I feel like Amendment 5 is actually going to fail. I door knock every door, every town, every county, and most everybody says vote no on 5 that I heard. Polling shows it's about 50-50 in the Republican Party. Honestly, there's a quiet group of people who like it, who don't say anything. But when the Democrats show up at the August primary, it's going to be 50-50 Republican and almost uniformly no for the Democrats. And all that will accumulate right into the total vote total for the state. So Amendment 5 will probably fail. But anyway, my answer on that was, I liked the no income tax because when I was growing up, I kind of provided for myself since I was a teenager, working and stuff like that, and having an extra $100, $200, I feel like it feels a good deal in your pocket. You could pay off your credit card, whatever. You could invest your 401k. It incentivizes people to get out of debt and to kind of like save. So I like that aspect of it. But if you're making prices go up for people, if you're making, and that's what people have a hard time with, they don't know if coffee is going to cost $20.
Yeah.
Or if, they're getting their haircut's going to cost an extra $30. So you're making prices go up for people. They're uncertain about that. It defeats the whole point, which for me was trying to help people get out of poverty. What do you think about that?
I think that's probably where, whether it's a misconception or if you want to call it fear, but the idea of, like for me, just personally, I know what I pay in taxes. It comes out of my check every 2 weeks. It's a number that I don't even miss because it's just already gone.
Right.
Sometimes I get it back in my tax return. Sometimes I don't, just depending on that year after I file. But I think it's the unknown for people when it's like, okay, so if I'm not paying income tax, obviously that money has to come back into the state some way, somehow.
Right.
It can't just disappear. So where else am I going to get hit maybe harder? And that's the unknown. Whereas people say, I already know this is coming out. I'd rather just take what I know instead of having that unknown. And we actually have JJ with us.
Cool. We'll come back to that. We'll put a pin in that and we get another break. We'll pick up on those questions at the forum. JJ, how are you doing today?
I'm doing pretty well. Good to be on with you.
Yeah, I always go ahead.
As long as we're talking about 4 and 5, we might as well continue talking about it.
You want to keep talking about it? Okay, so I want to. So last time we came on, I asked you to introduce yourself, but I want to make a few intro comments. You sort of, you kind of said you're not used to not being interrupted. That Dave mainly would jump in and interrupt you, and I was just kind of sitting there listening. And you got to talk more, and I kind of feel like, how old are you, JJ? You mind if I ask you that?
I am 78.
Okay, I kind of feel like I'm never going to interrupt anybody who's older than me, a man who's got more wisdom than me. So I was kind of raised that way, right? And I think you got a lot more things to say than I do, for sure.
Well, it's all right.
I hope
we have a conversation.
Let's have a conversation, but I want to hear what you have to say because you got a lot of things to say. So what, you want to start with 4 and 5?
Let's start out with 5.
Okay.
5 is going to fail, and it's going to fail for a very good reason. Several reasons, actually, but let's just hit the high points. Number 1, this does a dance around Hancock. And the Hancock Amendment was something that has benefited Missouri greatly over the years. It has forced our legislature to come up with a balanced budget. And I think that's very important. If we look at a federal government that's trillions of dollars in debt, Missouri is not. But let's face it, you're running for elected representative, and this is no reflection on you.
Yeah.
But I don't trust my elected representatives. And frankly, this thing smells like lobbyists all over it. What it's saying is, well, yeah, we're going to gradually decrease the income tax, and we're going to raise all the rest of the taxes in some unspecified manner. So you just got to trust us to do the right thing. I'm here to tell you, I don't trust you to do the right thing. There's way too much lobbyist influence in Jeff City, and my voice doesn't get heard. So is the idea of no income tax a great one? Yes. The implementation of this thing is done badly. And 4 is going to fail for the same reason, because it is written badly. There are ways to do this that are much cleaner. So yeah, am I going to vote against both of those? I absolutely am. I think both of those are a bill of goods, and they have the stench of lobbyists all over them. Your thoughts?
Okay, so the lobbyists are not uniformly in favor or against Amendment 5. It depends on what they're lobbying for. So if somebody lobbies for an association that makes their money off of services, they were lobbying against 5 to begin with. So
Sure.
like the legal profession lobbyists, anybody who provides, chiropractor, stuff like that, anybody who provides a service, automobile association, the realtors were firmly against it, right?
Sure.
Because they were concerned about a sales tax being put on housing or real estate costs. So all those lobbyists were always against 5.
Mm-hmm. And those are valid concerns. Of course,
Yeah.
They need to be discussed, and they need to be discussed in daylight, not behind a closed door in a smoky room.
No, I agree with that, and I think the Senate should be videotaped. There should be a film footage, so you could see who's ever saying. So, but I mean, there were some lobbyists in favor of 5 too. I mean, so there's not right, and I think your point's well taken. That one of the concerns people have is if the legislature has this kind of unfettered, this unrestrained ability, as a lot of people interpret that amendment giving them to levy taxes on whatever they want, then what will happen is the coffee maker lobbyist is going to show up and say, "Don't put sales tax on my industry."
Yeah, this will run amok.
Yeah, and then the people whose industries are not well represented by lobbyists, you think they should be well represented by legislators, but not well represented by lobbyists, they'll pay the brunt of the sales tax shift, and that's a valid concern. You definitely don't want that. But I also go ahead. You don't want that.
This is badly done, and frankly, with the amount of work that went into this thing, I think it could have been much better written, with some caveats in it.
Yeah.
To limit the legislature from running amok. 4 is the same thing. Our Constitution in Missouri is 40 pages long, 42 pages, something like that.
It's a lot longer than that now. Yeah.
It is. It's disgusting, the things that have happened to it. But 4 was not the answer to fix that. 4 was badly done. This could have been done in a much more thoughtful fashion. The way it is right now, if you followed for, you would have to have a 51 majority in every district in the state to get something passed. I think that's absolutely wrong. The way we've been doing it is terrible because of outside money that has flooded into this state.
Yeah.
Take a look at abortion, take a look at gambling, take a look at marijuana. There was an awful lot of that was funded externally from this state. And frankly, I don't like external money coming into my state. This is my damn state, and I don't want you people poking around in it. Now, other than executing all of the lobbyists that attempt to do that, which I might support at some point in my life,
I'm against that for the record.
We really need to slow them down and make their influence far less. But 4 is the wrong answer for this thing.
Okay.
I think it was badly drafted. If you look, the courts had to step in to change the wording of the darn thing because it was so deceptive. And if you read the entirety of it versus the executive summary that you get on the ballot, the two don't even look like each other. So yeah, this needs to fail. It needs to fail. And whether you support or don't support them doesn't matter to me. In the end, I think the voters are going to say, nah, we really don't want to do this way. And I think they'd be right. All right, can we go on to some national stuff for a bit? You still with me? Uh-oh, looks like we froze. I can hear me. Can you guys hear me? Don't like the looks of that. Tell you what, let me dial you up.
Yeah, JJ.
Yeah, let's try that now. Looks like we had a little network freeze.
Hey, this is Dave.
Oh, well, I was calling your show because.
Well, I know. I'm listening to the show.
Can you hear me on StreamYard? Because it froze.
No. Are you on the show now?
I have been. You guys hear me there?
No, I'm not there.
Yeah, I know. Let me hang up. All right. Don't know what's going on here. Maybe I've dropped out. Let me reload StreamYard. All right. Can you hear me? Hello, hello. Hello. It's not looking so good. All right. Well, somebody says they hear me, so I'll just continue.
Hey there.
Our Senate.
Oh,
Hey, I see you coming back.
yeah.
Yeah, sorry about that. Our internet went down, but now it just came back up.
This happens to me from time to time with the NSA. Here's what I'm saying.
Well, this is live, so yeah, it happens. Let's talk about John Thune for a minute. This guy's getting beat up daily in the network news, and we've got what is now the third reconciliation bill with the SAVE Act attached to it.
Yeah.
And John Thune apparently is the pivotal point. The man is claiming that, yeah, we can't get the votes for this. We can't do 60. Well, now that this is brought up in a budgetary bill, reconciliation, you only have to have 50 plus the vice president. John, I think it's time that you got off your butt and got a vote done on this thing. And frankly, I think it's time for you to burn down the filibuster. All the talking heads have been saying that if the Dems take over the Senate after the midterms, they're going to burn it down anyway. So what do you say, John, that we quit playing stupid procedural games and work on some legislation that the polls that I have read are 80+% Republicans and Democrats support the SAVE Act. So, John, I don't know what kind of silly political games you're playing, but it's time to get off the dime. Now, we've got a recess coming up. I sincerely hope that the Senate decides to stay and talk this thing out rather than tucking their tail between their pasty white legs and heading on out of Washington, D.C. You folks were hired to do the business of the United States and represent the citizens thereof. And I think you're doing a terrible job at it. Frankly, I think our Senate is very deficient in taking care of the public's business. But that's just me. And I'm considered to be a right-wing radical. So take what I say with a grain of salt. Actually, when we were down, I called Dave's number to come up with this thing on audio only. And Dave is wherever the hell he's at, answered his phone and said, yeah, I'm not there. And neither is my phone. So
I'm glad you came back on.
Well, it's live. Live stuff happens.
Live stuff happens. No, I think that's right on the Senate. The difference between 60 votes for cloture on a regular legislative bill and the reconciliation, it's a little bit of a fiction because the filibuster rule can be changed by 50% plus the vice president itself.
That's absolutely right. And they won't do it.
Yeah, they always have the votes. If they have a simple majority, you always have the votes to change the rules. So at any time John Thune wants to, he could pass the Save America Act.
I think he is rather deficient on that point.
Yeah, why do you think that is? Do you think that he's either covering for members of his caucus, or do you think it's him personally? What do you think the real reason he hasn't brought it up is?
I don't think the personally figures into it at all. There's political gamesmanship that's being played here. I think he has some fear of the midterms, as they all should. You know, if you're up for re-election in the midterms, you should be concerned. But people have been saying, well, you know, the Dems, traditionally, the party that's in power does badly in the midterms. I don't think that's going to be the case here. And I think Thune is worrying about some things that he ought not be worrying about. Frankly, they're going to kick him out of this position anyway, no matter what he does. So how about you bury your butt and get out there and get that vote taken? And at least everyone will be on record as to how they voted on this thing. I think hiding in the closet is a very bad idea on this.
Yeah, that's good advice. I think also that if he's worried about the midterms, to me, one of the best things you can do to be successful in the midterms is energize conservatives and give conservatives a reason to vote for you. Yes. And so if you have 10, 15% of Donald Trump voters, of MAGA voters, America First voters, who are disaffected by the way that the Republicans in the Senate have been feckless, they might not show up to the polls. Yes. So I think the first job that you have is to give people reason to vote for you. And passing the accomplishment of passing the Save America Act, or your efforts, you're telling people how you're going to pass the Save America Act, that gives people reason to vote. I mean, that's one of probably the top 10. If I say top 10 issues I heard about on the campaign trail, election integrity comes up frequently. Indeed. It comes up that they don't want another 2020 election. People don't want electronic machines. They don't want, whether they're non-American citizens voting, or people who don't live in this district voting, or people who voted twice voting, or people who filled out a ballot and they ballot harvested. They don't want any of that stuff.
Yeah, voter fraud is still voter fraud.
They don't want, and I had that post about it where I said, hey, let's have voter ID and only citizens vote. And man, I got maybe 30 messages that said, this is not a problem. There's voter fraud, not a problem. And I responded almost as many as I could. Eventually you quit responding, right? But I said, hey, even if there's zero voter fraud, even if there was zero, even if there were zero, you should still prove that you're an American citizen to vote and show a voter
ID.
That's
absolutely right. And as long as we're talking about that, let's talk about the New Jersey debacle for a minute, because this reared its ugly head this week more than I thought it would. For those that live in Duke, Missouri and haven't heard about this, there's 6,600 illegal votes that were discovered in New Jersey. Their governor, Mike Sherrill, says this was a software glitch. Now, the network news carried that as a software glitch for, about a week. And the company, the software vendor that supposedly had the software glitch is IDEMIA, IDEMIA. And a spokesman from IDEMIA came on and actually got time on the network news and said, not so fast. The state received notifications through this software that there were folks identified as non-citizens, and they were allowed to vote anyway. Now, does this smell bad for the election folks in New Jersey? I would say certainly so. Now, this becomes a he said, she said until it gets in the courts and evidence is actually provided. But what that tells me is that at least in the state of New Jersey, and I would bet in any blue state, there's a lot of folks that turn their head the other way in voter fraud. We saw it in Georgia. I mean, come on, we've got it on videotape in Georgia. We've got whistleblowers standing in the aisles waiting to testify about Georgia. So, yeah, folks, network news guys, don't try to tell me that there is no voter fraud. Don't try to tell me that this stuff is not rigged in some percentage. The majority, maybe not. But to tell me that there is no voter fraud, checks in the mail, I don't buy it.
You know, another question I get, this is a daily question I get. Somebody says, who won the 2020 election, right?
Donald Trump.
Yeah, that's what I've been saying. They say, do you think that fraud changed the election?
Absolutely.
And I say, yes. So, but people go, well, you know, because the nominees, when they're getting confirmed by the Senate, they have this canned answer where the Democrats ask them, who won the 2020 election? And they say, Senator, the Electoral College certified Joe Biden as president, right? So they're giving well, I mean, there's a technical aspect to it, which because the Electoral College just selects the president, right? But what they're not saying is that nobody wants to say is there was massive voter fraud. And that's what drove which electors were selected by their states.
There was absolutely.
So my brother and I,
if you want to have a three-way conversation between you and Dave Weinbaum and me, we could have a hell of a conversation on this because Dave and I both believe that was stolen outright. And now we're starting to see evidence that suggests that that was the case.
I wish we could go back to like a September 2020 is one of my first interviews with Dave Weinbaum. It was 6 years ago. Mm-hmm. And and COVID was happening and they were just changing the rules for mail-in ballot that they had to be postmarked before the election. Yeah. And I was on his show. This was before the election. And I went on his show and I said, you know, I work at a law firm and we can take a stack of 300 envelopes right now and postmark them for today. And then in a month we can put a letter in them, right? You could, I mean, if you have a meter reader for postage, right? You can go get your envelope postmarked right now.
Well, anything you want. Yeah.
And you could wait till, and then people do this all over the country, right? You can go get it postmarked today. Mm-hmm. And then when you put in it, you could put in it on election day, after election day. So I said, man, they could put stacks of ballots in, you know, in Pennsylvania.
And they did.
They did.
One of the things in Georgia that galled me so badly, anyone with a room temperature or better IQ could recognize that a mail-in ballot that had no folds on it was clearly fraudulent. The envelopes aren't that big. You got to trifold the dang thing just to put it in the mail. And they had stack after stack after stack of ballots that were supposedly mailed in, that were stripped from the container, the envelope, and had no folds.
Well, so you go ahead.
As a poll worker, wouldn't you look at that and say, wait a minute, the last 30 that I've looked at came out of envelopes and they got no folds on them. Maybe we ought to have a supervisor over here to take a look at this thing. And of course they didn't because they're corrupt. They knew exactly what was going on.
Yeah, the law requires you verify signatures. The law requires authentication, and none of that was being followed. But here, to me, this is the most egregious thing, or one of the most egregious things in Georgia. And for the whole, we're being gaslit all after 2020. There's no election fraud, nothing to see here, people.
Trust me.
Yeah, the most egregious thing is the most obviously blatant egregious thing that I can remember was in the ballot counting location in Georgia. They'll tell everybody the water main broke. We got to evacuate the building.
I remember that.
They evacuate all the Republicans out of the building, right? The Republican poll watchers. So they're gone. And then what happens is ballot counting resumes when they're gone.
Mm-hmm.
And then people go, well, obviously something bad happened in there. And the Democrats said there's no proof of that. Well, lo and behold, there was surveillance footage of it. And on the surveillance footage, there's a woman counting ballots, and she pulls a trunk out of ballots underneath the thing, and then goes to the Scantron and runs the ballots through one time, runs the ballots through two times, runs the ballots through three times. So they're triple counting ballots for Joe Biden.
Mm-hmm.
So a ballot for Joe Biden got counted three times in the system, and you could sit her and watch her do hundreds of those like that. And that right there, just on video, that looks like an extra 12,000 votes to me.
I want to know why there are not indictments, why there are not prosecutions. Now, investigations go on all the time. And if you look at the last year, there's been a hell of a lot of investigation going on. Nobody's arrested. Nobody's gone to trial. Nobody's convicted. So are we just making noise about this, or are we actually going to catch up with this at the other end and assure some jail time for some people that committed, in my opinion, treason, although others would say it's simply fraud? That's like saying the January 6 folks committed felonies when the worst thing that I saw was nothing but a misdemeanor criminal trespass. So,
well, it's kind of like the experience we were doing is mRNA in your food that's modifying your genes, and people said you're crazy, but there was so much, but it was common sense. There's so much resistance to something common sense like that, saying we'll just inform people. And I feel like voter fraud and voter ID and citizenship is like that. It's like you just said, 80% of the public wants it. 80% says it's common sense. Okay. Yeah. Common sense. The whole public says, yeah, you should be a citizen to vote. But then when you try to do it, look at all the resistance. And to me, the
resistance is coming from, though.
The Republican Party. But to me, from the establishment Republicans, from the rhinos. But to me, the resistance is evidence of the problem, right?
Indeed.
Because if there really wasn't any voter fraud, if there weren't non-citizens voting,
this is slide right through.
Then why would you have a problem with saying show you're a citizen?
That's
how I kind of think about it.
Yeah. We're running up against the clock, so I've got a little parting shot for you if you're ready. Okay. Jack Smith. If you remember ancient history, Jack Smith took on Donald Trump in criminal prosecution. And Jack Smith testified before Congress in an 8-hour marathon session in which he said an awful lot of things, and surprise, it's videotaped. C-SPAN taped all of it. On Wednesday, Jim Jordan, who is the head of the House Judiciary Committee, referred Jack Smith to the DOJ for prosecution. Why? Misleading and lying to Congress. Well, everybody lies, okay? This one was particularly egregious. And if you take a look, what Jack Smith was claiming that Donald Trump had done is what Jack Smith is fixing to be prosecuted for. So this thing is running full circle. He spied or had law enforcement spy on text messages in Congress. Mm-hmm. And looks like the smoking gun is there. Looks like they got the goods on him.
Yeah.
So I think he's scrambling right now. I don't like the guy. I didn't like the guy the first time I saw him. I didn't like the guy because of what he was trying to do to Donald Trump. And this has come full circle. Whoops.
Is that you, JJ?
That was my phone going off. You know, there are people that know that I do this show and others that have no clue. This is probably somebody wanting to sell me siding. So I think I've said what I wanted to say for today. I thoroughly enjoyed talking with you.
JJ, while you're here, let's get a couple of these comments here.
Okay.
So Trina, hopefully I can say the last name right. Ari Kani? I don't know. I probably butchered that one. But I hear you, JJ. I'm guessing that's when we were having our internet issues here at the office.
Oh, yeah.
Ray Maddox, we can hear you. And that was obviously, again, another sound check there. Lisa Weinbaum, good morning to everybody. Kathy Sanford Dillon, happy Friday of everyone. Love you all. Have a blessed weekend. Hardwick for president. Common sense leading our country. That would be amazing.
There we go.
There you go. So we're going to bypass state Senate, Bill, and just take you straight to the White House. How about that?
Well, I think that's probably a wise idea.
And then Ann Maddox, hello. And I believe both Roy and Ann are your relation, right?
They are. That's my daughter and son-in-law, and they listen often. I don't know why they'd want to hear what I have to say, but they do it fairly faithfully.
Well, I enjoyed listening to what you had to say.
It has been my pleasure, and can't wait to hear what the rabbi has to say.
Yep. Look forward to talking to you next time. Thanks, JJ.
We'll do it. Good day.
You too.
All right. That's going to do it for JJ Bradshaw. Thanks, JJ, for coming on and leading off on the show. We're going to go take our first commercial break. And when we come back, Rabbi Moshe, all the way from Israel, will be calling in and talking to us and giving us all the breakdown of what's going on in Israel. We'll be back right after the break.
Honey, what are you doing?
What does it look like I'm doing?
It looks like you're filling up a swimming pool.
Yep, I'm filling up a swimming pool.
In our living room?
How else am I going to watch the game and stay cool?
If your AC is on the fritz, call Hartley's Climate Control. Hartley's is the area's best in HVAC repairs, installs, and maintenance. Knowledgeable, honest, and dependable. Serving Rolla and the surrounding areas for commercial or residential needs. Hartley's Climate Control. Community born, community raised, community serving.
Call Hartley's Climate Control today at 573-368-3163.
Never be too coy to tell your friends and family about koi sushi and hibachi. Celebrate the best Chinese-Japanese restaurant in the Midwest. Call 573-426-5551 to make a reservation or order takeout. Locally owned, 1808 North Bishop, Rolla, Missouri.
We can sum up McDonald's new crispy chicken sandwich in one word. Crispy. But also juicy and tender. Okay, it's crispy, juicy, tender. All one word. But then, also pickle. Oh, and potato bun, which is two words. Okay, we can't sum up our new crispy chicken sandwich in one word, so you'll just have to try it to understand it. Order ahead on the McDonald's app at participating McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Merrill's Quarry and Asphalt, 40 years serving cities, counties, and everyday businesses with driveways for people who live and work in our little piece of heaven right smack dab in the middle of America. Call 573-578-9101 for your free estimate of rocking, rolling, paving, driveways, sealing, and striping too. That's 573-578-9101 for your free estimate.
Your home is your castle. You don't need unwanted hassle. Don't let those creatures move in to stay. Let us protect your investments. That's what we're all about. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
Plank is locally owned and family operated right here in Rolla, a Google preferred business. Our customer service and your satisfaction is our number one goal. So call Plank today at 368-3333.
Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
At your locally owned Price Chopper, our standards are high because we know yours are. See for yourself what an incredible fresh selection of grocery items we have in store. Talk to our expert meat associates about what you're looking for. They're happy to meet any special requests like custom cuts, or see our expert produce associates on how to pick out the best fruits and vegetables. Quality in the deli means fresh, full flavor, and always delicious. If you're craving fresh baked goodness, we have that too. You can expect the best selection and the best value while interacting with our friendly and knowledgeable employees. You can find what you're looking for fast and easily at the best prices at Price Chopper. Fresh savings every day. Insurance going up like crazy? Daniel and Henry Insurance is one of the largest private insurance companies in the world. Richard Boyette, 314-444-5011. He's my guy at Daniel and Henry for 10 years. Business or personal, call Richard at 314-444-5011. He's the best.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Bob Willis, an author and writer, and I write nature books. I live here in a ranch on the Ozarks and have published many books over 2 decades of writing. The Trout Adventure series of books was about traveling the world with a camera and a fly rod. The Last Buffalo in Kansas is a true story about one family's journey through 100 years of American history. A couple of years ago, I decided to write a children's nature series of books. 2 of those books have been published. The Adventures of Dog is a story about a puppy that grows up on a ranch in the Ozarks and has fabulous adventures. The Adventures of the Cats R Us Gang is about a group of cats that band together to protect the ranch from a dastardly group of raccoons. Wonderful stories for children, wholesome, about nature and the Ozarks. They're available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and in Walmart even. They're available locally at Reader's Depot. Hey, take a look at them. Thanks a lot.
At Town & Country Bank, we've got all the perks of a national bank, like online banking, quick loan approval, and you can deposit your check from your phone. But that's not why our customers love us. They love us because we still offer hometown customer service. Stop by one of our 2 Rolla locations and let our friendly team remind you how special hometown banking can be. We're locally owned and will take the time to understand your needs. Smart, friendly solutions. Town & Country Bank. Member FDIC, Equal Housing Lender.
All right. Well, thanks to our sponsors. And now we're going to go to Rabbi Moshe all the way from Israel. And, of course, he is the author of this book, Secrets of the Hebrew Bible, which we'll be talking about here in a little while. Rabbi, welcome to the show. You're off for 2 weeks. How you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, we're doing good. And, of course, I've got Bill Hardwick here sitting in for Dave today.
Hey, good morning.
See you, Bill.
How are you doing? Yeah.
Good. And you?
Thanks for. I'm doing well. Just we're having our mornings flying by. Looking forward to a good discussion with you. Mind if I ask you a couple questions? Last time so Secrets of the Hebrew Bible. If somebody read that book, what are some takeaways? What would they kind of find out in that book?
They would find out that to truly connect directly with God, particularly the author of the Hebrew Bible, what Christians call the Old Testament, the best way to do that would be to read it, to be able to access the language that it was written in. That's the basic point of it. When you access anything or any relationship through a translator, you're already missing out on flavor and color and sometimes incredible depth of meaning. I mean, you even see this in English, for example, when you use idiomatic phrases in English that can't be translated. I mean, even in slang, when you say things, you can't have your cake and eat it too. Sometimes when the word bad refers to good, or good refers to bad, or slim refers to someone who's fat. Like things don't always translate, and the Bible's the same. Like I'll give you an example. In Hebrew, the Bible says in the book of Ecclesiastes, "Tov Shem Mishemen Tov," which translates literally as a good name is better than good oil. Now, that's the literal translation, but it's actually a play on words. Shem means is a name. Shemen means oil. I don't know if you can hear that the words are similar. Shem, Shemen. Shem, Shemen. So it's Tov, Shem. A name is good. Mishemen Tov, then good oil. So a lot of that's a very simple one, but in the book, I give lots of examples. I give you an example. Like in English, the word you can be used plural or singular. Depends on the context of how it's used and how it's referred to. In Hebrew, you have a difference. And for example, it says the Israelites encamped by Mount Sinai. So the word for encamped used in the Bible is vayichan. Vayichan means, it actually means one person camped. It does not mean plural. But when you translate it into English, you would say he encamped, they encamped, we encamped. And so the word encamped doesn't indicate whether it's one person or multiple people, but in Hebrew it does. So the word vayichan means one person camped by Mount Sinai. So that all the biblical commentators who read the Hebrew ask, 1 second, the entire nation of Israel was there. Why does it why does it make a seeming grammatical error and refer to the entire nation as if there was only one person there? And so they answer and they say, because they camped as one people with one heart. They were so united, they were like one person. So the Hebrew uses the singular. Now, every 7-year-old Jewish kid knows what I just said to you, because they know that interpretation. But if you can't read the Hebrew, you'll literally skim through the English, and nothing unusual will jump out at you from the text. And it's like that from the very first word of the Bible. And so I teach courses like this to people who don't speak Hebrew. And I have a whole system of how to teach people who can't read Hebrew how to access, the Hebrew. That's the gist of it. And that's what kind of motivated me to write the book. There's like 40 examples of the one I just told you is in the book, but there's like 40 examples of this. Something like that. So I called it The Secrets. Sometimes I get pushback. People say, there's no secrets in the Bible. But again, if you look at Psalm, I think it's 25, it says, Sod Hashem l'Re'av, the secrets of God are to those who fear him. Meaning that those who connect deepest with God, secrets are revealed to you. Meaning it's not, what is a secret? A secret is something that you just don't have access to, something you don't know. It doesn't necessarily have to be top secret, but there are things that are top secret. And why do some people know it? Because they have access to information. So it's the same thing, I think, with the Bible. When it says the secrets of the Lord, it simply is referring to the idea that if you want to understand someone, you have to know the code words, so to speak. You have to know. It's like when you speak with your wife. Your wife will say something to you in public that no one else will understand, but somehow you get it. You know what she's referring to. You know what she means. And
that's a great analogy.
That's what I think. It's like when you connect with God's word, something that you read 100 times the Bible, even if you read it in English, you will understand the nuances. You'll feel closer to God if you read it 100 times than someone who's read it twice.
That's so good. That's right. The people who know me better think I'm funnier because they get what I'm saying.
My wife knows all my jokes already. So.
Right. And just like you say, the closer you get to God, the more you understand what he's saying.
Exactly. It's like if you read, let's say you're a fan of, Robert Ludlum, and you, by the time you've read his 5th or 6th book, you kind of get a sense of who he is and what kind of, what
he's trying to say.
Exactly. And it's the same thing when you read the Bible. If you read one chapter, you're not going to, you'll get something out of it, no doubt, but it doesn't compare to reading the whole book. Sometimes people talk to me about some of the more complicated books like Isaiah or Ezekiel, where there's not a lot of narrative. It's a lot of, it's a lot of poetry and it's a lot of prophecy. And it's much more difficult to understand that than say it is to reading the book of Genesis or the book of Samuel, and what they don't do is read all 66 chapters of the book of Isaiah. They'll pick out one paragraph or one chapter or one verse. And it's very hard to understand when you're not connecting with Isaiah through the entire book. When you read the whole book, then you feel like you know the author a lot better than when you read one verse, one chapter, or even 5 chapters.
I want to ask you some questions about the Old Testament too.
Sure.
Can you tell me more about the language transition though? Is the entire Old Testament in ancient Hebrew? Is there an Aramaic period?
Tell
me about that.
In the book of Genesis, there are 2 words, as far as I know, that are in Aramaic. In the book of Daniel, from around chapter, I think 3 or 4 on, it switches to Aramaic. But
like Daniel's half Hebrew, half Aramaic?
Well, it's probably more Aramaic than it is Hebrew. And it doesn't switch. It's not like one verse Aramaic, one verse Hebrew. It's all Hebrew in the first couple chapters, and then it switches to Aramaic, and then it's all Aramaic. But other than that, the Bible's 99%. There's 23,000 verses in the Hebrew Bible. It's almost 4 times as long as the Christian Bible or the New Testament. It's a very, very long book. And,
Don't I know it?
Yeah, it's quite long, and
a lot of begetting.
Yeah, a lot of that, but that's ancient English. There are modern English translations. Some are excellent, some are less good. But people, when you read begat and thy and thou and whence and so on, it's like reading Shakespeare, and it becomes very difficult in the translations.
The difference between Hebrew and Aramaic and the origins of those languages. Do you have any insight on that?
Yeah, first of all, they're sister languages. I can read and speak Aramaic, even though Aramaic's not a spoken language, but many Jewish books are written in Aramaic. The more than 7,000 pages of the Talmud or the oral law is written in Aramaic. And that's there's no question that, say, Jesus, for example, he was very, very comfortable in Aramaic because that was the rabbinic language. It became a lingua franca because Hebrew was seen as something that was holy, and it was used, say, for prayer or used in study. But as a day-to-day language, Hebrew wasn't really a day-to-day language. It was more of something that was holy. Even when they revived modern Hebrew, Hebrew was a dead language. It was revived in the late 1800s, early 1900s by a guy named Eliezer Ben Yehuda. When he revived it, there was a lot of opposition because people felt that Hebrew was a holy language and it should not be used as on the day-to-day street language. What makes it a holy language? It's interesting. It's fascinating. There's 2 different comments that I saw. One says it's called a holy language because it's the language of creation. If you look at the book of Genesis, 9 times in the first chapter, it says God said. So if God said, the tradition is, I think amongst Christians and Jews, that God spoke in Hebrew, and that's the holy tongue. The other opinion, which is fascinating, is that the Bible does not have any quote unquote dirty words. And therefore, Hebrew is called the holy language. For example, intimacy between Adam and Eve is referred to as knowledge. Adam knew his wife. There's no words that are in biblical Hebrew that are dirty words. In modern Hebrew, there's plenty, I can assure you. But in biblical Hebrew, there aren't. So others say that's why it was called the holy language, because there was no room for profanity within it, which is fascinating.
That's interesting. Okay, Old Testament stories.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I call it the Old Testament. Favorite stories.
That's fine. Me personally?
Yeah. Favorite Old
Testament.
Because last week on last time on the show, I said the Old Testament's my jam. So I went back and read some more Old Testament stories, and it's the best literature, I think. Writing wise. Tell me, give me your favorites, thoughts.
When it's interesting, I'll tell you, when the printing press came out, I think it was in the 1400s or so. I always confuse it with the cotton gin and the printing press. From elementary school, we learned
part of the Industrial Revolution.
So the first book that was printed was the Bible. It's the most printed book ever. By the way, do you know what was second? The second printed book ever was pornography, which is kind of makes sense also. But my favorite stories, I love King David, and there's a lot of stories. But one of my favorite King David stories, which is a little bit overlooked sometimes, is the story of when Samuel comes to the home of Jesse to announce who's going to be the next king.
Yeah.
And I love that story because if you really think about it in our terms, it's almost like a beauty contest. There's a lot of tension, and he looks at the oldest son, and it's not him, and he goes through each one, and it's none of them, and you imagine being there at the dinner table, and they're eliminating one by one by one, kind of like, when you see I don't even know if they have them anymore, but when I was a kid, on TV, the beauty, and they eliminate, number the 5th runner up, the 4th, and they're going through each one, and there's 2 left. And then Samuel says, it's not this one. And the last one, Samuel looks at him because it's not him either. And you hear Samuel's kind of confused because God told him to come there. And he looks at Jesse, and this is what's lost on people. He looks at Jesse and he says to him, it just makes me laugh. He goes, do you have any other sons? And Jesse
You
says,
think-
well, yeah,
They're like,
you know,
I guess there is this other guy. Yeah.
exactly. That makes me laugh. And Jesse goes, yeah, well, you know, there is one more. And then he's just quiet. What Jesse should have said there is, there one more, let me go get him. He doesn't, because he's in shock. He can't believe that. So Samuel says to him, well, can you go get him? You know, they didn't even invite him to the meal. He was such an underdog. No one even thought it might be David. And when they bring him in and Samuel looks at him and he says, hey, this is the next king of Israel. I love that whole scene. I mean, so if you ask me my favorite stories, that's for sure one of them. You know, there's a lot, but, you know.
That's a good one, too, because, you know, so David's one of my favorite characters. You know, he slays Goliath, but there's a whole part about where Saul's like, you know, go kill bring back the foreskins, right? Which, too graphic, but do that. And David, like, doubles up on, he's just wiping people out left and right.
Yep.
He's, reuniting Israel, all this stuff. He's like this really, and David's got his missteps, but David's a really good, competent king, right? And they show his emotional side and stuff, but he's like this really very, even in that verse, it says the Spirit of God came with power, king. But then I never thought about that. Just wait till you said that. But at the very beginning, all of his family was like, really?
Yeah.
That's how they viewed him. They were like, seriously.
There's a TV show. I don't know if you've seen it, Rabbi, House of David, that's out, getting ready to go into season 3 now.
My son just told me about it. He said, you got to watch it. He said,
now, really here's the thing. They admit that they've taken some leniency, and it's not completely. That's why it's important to read your Bible, because if you read the story of David, then you know already what's accurate and what's not. And they tell you, we're going to take some creative liberties. But they got that scene right. I find that scene in that show very compelling, because when Samuel shows up, and the guy playing Samuel in this series is fantastic. And he's looking at everybody, he's like, none of these are him. Do you have another son like you talked about?
Right.
And this says, yeah. And I mean, Samuel's like, well, can you go get him? Like, it was played out exactly as it was in there. But the thing I think about David is, we talk about Goliath, all the great things, and then all the missteps that he did. But the thing with David, he was known as a man after God's own heart. God said that about David. And I think it's because every time David was found in failure, he did the wrong thing. He didn't try to cover it up. He didn't try to put it on somebody else. He said he owned it. And he came with humility and humbleness and asked for repentance.
Right.
And
David,
to me, that's the big difference.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Correct. David descends from Judah. Remember, Judah is the one when he's approached by Tamar, and she says, who does this staff belong to? And Judah right away says, she is more righteous than I am, that she's correct. And so David stems from that. Saul, on the other hand, when he's confronted, why didn't he kill the Amalekites? What does he say? He says, well, the people pressured me and this and that, and I really did it, and so on and so forth. The funny thing is, it's hysterical. It's another joke in the Bible. When Saul says, I really did it, and Samuel says to him, well, what's the sound of the sheep that I hear? Right? You're supposed to kill them. Now, that's funny, but it's even funnier when you hear what the Hebrew word is. The Hebrew word is meh. So he's saying to him, meh.
He's like mocking him derisively.
It's what they call in English poetry, what's it called? Onomatopoeia, where the word sounds like
the thing.
So in Hebrew, it's the word meh. And what is the sound of a sheep? The sheep says meh, right? And so he says to meh kol hatzon, what is the voice of the sheep that I hear? And so the Hebrew language, it's hysterical when Samuel turns to him and says that.
Samuel didn't mess around.
No,
Samuel's like a really kind of hardcore character.
If especially Samuel, watch House of David, because Samuel obviously is key in that story. And even just how there's one scene where they go to the tabernacle, and they're going to make the sacrifice, the yearly sacrifice. And he's already, like, Saul knows that somebody else has been appointed king, but he doesn't know who.
Yeah.
All right.
And David's in his company as it is. So, like, his replacement's right there, and he has no idea. And Saul goes to approach the podium at the tabernacle, and he's trying to pressure Samuel, anoint me as king again. And Samuel's like, but God didn't say that, so I'm not going to do it. And by the way, this podium is meant for priests, not kings. Get down. And I'm like, Samuel had some. He was a bad dude.
Samuel hacks that guy up when the guy's like, just hey, let's let it go. And Samuel just takes a sword and like cuts him into pieces.
Well, this is This is, by the way, a tension throughout the Hebrew Bible between the prophet and the king. And it's like separation of church and state. It really is. And when you have a king, you had some wicked kings that overstep their bounds and try to usurp the role also of prophecy. That's when things really went bad. And so Samuel wasn't afraid to speak to the king. That was his job. That was his job to and the king wasn't meant to step into his domain and take over what he's supposed to be doing.
Another thing with Samuel with this that I find just amazing is nobody doubted that Samuel was a prophet and heard from God, because even in the show they depicted that if Samuel said it and God said this, they took it as then God himself stated this. There was like no denying it. Oh, he's not hearing from God. They had the proof that he was hearing from God the whole time, all the way through his life.
That's interesting though about the tension between the prophet and the king.
Yeah.
That there are godly kings and there are ungodly kings, but there's the prophet that shows up and was like, "Hey, what are you doing? You got to fix it." Yeah, that's a reoccurring theme. Yeah,
it's his job, and it really is reflected in the U.S. political system of separation of church and state. As the president, can't tell church leaders or what they're supposed to be preaching and teaching. That's their domain. And that's the idea of the prophet. Now, I think it's a very powerful idea. But look, the Bible to me is I never liked the word Bible, because the word Bible, and this is the intro to the book, comes from the Latin biblios. Biblios means a book.
Right.
When you think of a book has a beginning, a middle, and an end. The word Torah means teaching. And no matter what age you are, no matter how many times you've read it, it's always teaching. It's always with you. And when you hear and read the biblical stories, they're always relevant. You can always find messages. Like when J.D. Vance was talking about Israel, and he said, no one likes Israel. They're standing alone. Here, my first reaction was that is exactly what the prophet Bilam said. He says it's a nation that stands alone. And J.D. Vance wasn't the first to say that. And Jews don't mind that. We don't mind standing alone, and we've always throughout history felt that we've had to stand alone, whether it was against Hitler, whether it was against the Roman Empire, the strongest empire in the world. And we felt that, we had morality and ethics on our side against the Roman Empire, and we would stand alone, and that's okay. It's not a threat when J.D. Vance says to Israel, you're standing alone. We go to the Bible, and the Bible is not a Bible. It's a Torah. It's teaching, and it's relevant to every generation. So, of course I use the word Bible because that's what people use, but the word Torah is the same as the word Mora. Mora means a teacher. When you go to school, your teacher is a Mora because they are a teacher, and the Torah is a teaching. And so I think it's not just a semantic difference. It's a difference of how you experience the Bible. Do you experience it as a book, or do you experience it as constantly your guide, your teacher in every dimension, every aspect of your life?
I was going to ask you a bunch of geopolitics questions, but I think I want to ask you theology questions instead. Can I ask you theology instead for a little bit? Or
I'm happy, whatever I can answer. I'll do my best.
Well, I had a bunch of current events things, but now you're making questions come to my mind. So the word Israel comes from the story of Jacob, right? Where he goes and he wrestles with the man. And so Israel means people who wrestle with God, right?
Right.
What's your interpretation of that?
Yeah. So it's fascinating. You don't even realize the contradiction you just said. You just said Israel means because he wrestled with God.
Yeah.
But the Bible is telling us
it's a man.
It doesn't say that. It says ki sarita im elokim vatuchal, right? Because you wrestled with God and you have been successful, right? Now, the word Yisrael means you have wrestled with God. It leaves out the part that and you have been victorious, right? It leaves out that whole part, okay? And it leaves out any reference to saying that he was wrestling with a man, okay? So he was wrestling with God and you were victorious, you overcame. So the emphasis, the word Israel means struggling. It doesn't mean struggling and overcoming, which is, again, that's an enormous teaching there. That I think in that story it says you are called Yisrael. Why? Because you sarita im Elokim. Sarita im Elokim means you struggled with God. So Yisrael means Sarita im Elokim, Yisrael. But the word Vatuchal, and you overcame and you succeeded, was left out of the name Israel. And so to me, that story is very powerful. Now, and I have to be honest with you, some of the Jewish biblical commentators look at that story and they say it's a literal event, and some look at it as a very deep prophecy, as a kind of a dream that Jacob had. It was so vivid that his woke up and his leg was hurting him. Okay, so no matter how you look at it, right, it's the outcome is still the same in that verse, but it's a very, very powerful idea, because there are two words that are used: the word Jew and Israelite. Right, the word Jew, it does appear in the Bible. Do you know where it appears for the very first time to refer to the Israelites, or referred to as Jews also, or Jewish?
No.
Where it appears for the first time in the book of Esther, when it says that there was a man from Benjamin, Ish Yemini, Hayab Shushan, who was in Shushan, Ushmo Mordechai, and his name was Mordechai.
Oh.
And then it says Ish Yehudi. He was a Yehudi. He was Jewish, but he was from the tribe of Benjamin. So why are they calling him Jew?
Right.
So we start to see that since the tribes had been, 10 of the tribes had disappeared already, right? They had disappeared. They had been scattered. So the remaining largest tribe was the tribe of Judah. And so they became known as Jews or Judahites. Or that's why the land became known as Judea, because Judah was the leading tribe. So Israelite and Jew are the same. They're just developments of the word. It's the same thing if you look at, the word African American. When I was growing up, there wasn't a term. We referred to people as blacks. Now, some people still use the word black, and even use word like Negro was not an offensive word, but names change, right? And, and now the proper word to refer to someone who is black is African American. Fair enough. And the same thing, you had the children of Israel, you had Israelites, you had Jews. The names just keep changing.
In the book of Esther, is it derisively used, or is it just like you say the English or something?
It's not derisively used, right? Mordechai was from the tribe of Benjamin, but they call him a Jew because the tribe of Judah was the biggest tribe, and most of the people who were remaining at that point were from the tribe of Judah. So they just called everybody Jews. Jew is just short for Judah. The word Judah comes from, of course, from Leah names her son Judah, says, "This time I will thank the Lord," right? And therefore I call him Judah. Now, if you read that in English, it doesn't make any sense, right? It's like the same thing with Moses, right? She drew him from water, and hence she called him Moses, right? She should have called him Drew, right? Why'd she call him Moses? But in Hebrew, the word Drew is Mishitihu. So Mishitihu, and she called him Moshe. Moshe means drawn from water. Mishitihu, Moshe. You see how the words are similar. Yeah. When Leah names in Judah, she says, Hapam, this time, Odeh, I will thank. Odeh is Yehudah. So Judah and Odeh, they're the same word in Hebrew, but it doesn't translate. Plays on words don't translate. And so a lot of flavor is lost. The word Levi, right? Why was Levi called Levi?
Yeah.
She says, Hapam, this time, Yilaveh ishi elai, my husband will be drawn to me. Yilaveh, 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 Levi, Yilaveh, Levi, Yilaveh, drawn to me. So the word Levi means drawn to me. So all the names are like that.
But did they say? But when they called them by their name, did they say it differently than the phrase? Or is it getting confusing in language to call somebody a phrase all the time?
It would be like, I'm trying to think of a good English example, would be Daniel, okay? And you might call someone, we called him Daniel because his grandfather was named Daniel, but people call him Dan. They call him Dan. No one calls him Daniel. They call him Dan. So you have a word that's, Dan obviously is very similar to Daniel. It's a shortened form. So in Hebrew, you'll have like a form of the word, like Yehuda, Judah literally means to be thankful. But But the word Leah uses is odeh, which is I will be thankful. So it's just a form of the word. And in the Bible, you also had what's called theophoric names, names that contain the word of the name of God. Sorry, my phone's ringing. Can you hear that?
Yes, I can.
Okay, sorry. My daughter just drafted to the Army. I just have to tell her I'll call.
Go ahead. That's okay.
Shira? I can't. Can I call you back in a few minutes? Okay, great. Love you. Bye.
So I know you got to go soon. You know what? Interesting.
No, my daughter drafted to the Army on Monday, and she's off now. She gets off for a few hours before the Sabbath begins. So I have time. So I was saying a theophoric name is a name that contains the name of God. So, for example, Daniel contains the name of God. Hezekiah contains the name of God. Elijah contains the name of God within it. These are theophoric names, which is interesting. They took the name of God and adapted a name in the Bible to absorb within them the name of God.
That seems fitting for people made in the image of God.
Yeah. They had no problem with that.
So that's interesting. So an interesting takeaway that I have, or listening, is the two words for the Israeli people mean to struggle with God and to be thankful.
Correct. And we talk and we think a lot about that. That the first thing we do as a Jew in the morning, we say, you're supposed to open your eyes when you wake up, and we say, Modeh ani lefanecha, I am thankful to you, God, shehachzarta bi nishmati, you've returned my soul to me, Rabba emunatecha, great is my faith, great is your faith. And the very first word out of your mouth is thank you in the morning, right? Because if you think about your life, if you wake up in the morning, right, everything else is a bonus, everything else is a bonus, and if God wants you to be dead, you'd be dead. If he wants you to be alive, then you know what, there's something else you have to be doing in this world. If you're awake today, then thank God. God says, okay, there's something else you got to be doing in my world. And so that's the first word out of our mouths as Jews. Modeh ani, thank you, God, for giving me back my soul. When I guide here in Israel, I'm a tour guide, and I have Christian groups, and I tell them that, they're blown away by that. And I tell people, you don't have to be Jewish. Just wake up every morning. The second you open your eyes, say thank you. Just say thank you to God.
Well, I'm a Christian, and I relate to that because I feel like I'm wrestling with God every single day. Yeah. And then I'm also just wrestling with the world, right? And then I feel like the one milieu might be the word, the membrane that connects it all, like the thing that kind of translates through each of those stages, is just have an attitude of thankfulness toward God.
Right. That's what they call the attitude of gratitude. It's funny because I was driving once, and I told my wife the story. I was driving and I wasn't in such a good mood. So I said to myself, okay, I'm just going to have, today I'm going to fight to have a great attitude. And I kept repeating, saying, I have a mantra. Today I'm going to have a great attitude. And I kept saying to myself while I'm driving, great attitude, great attitude. And as I said it like the 10th, 12th time, I said, great attitude, gratitude. And for a moment, I actually thought I made up a new word, and then I realized, oh, that word actually exists, but gratitude is having a great attitude. That's what I think in English where it comes from, so it's powerful, and this is, by the way, one of the reasons I started my organization originally was because there's so much overlap and there's so much that we as Jews and you as Christians have in common. And there's so much we can learn from each other without focusing on where we disagree, because, discussing disagreement, I find fascinating, but it doesn't help me grow as a person. It's interesting. It might be academic, but sharing things like this can help us grow in our service of God, whether a Jew and a Christian. And so my whole premise of my organization was, let's focus on where we find commonalities. Let's focus on where we can work together to make the world a more godly, a more goodly place. And that was the whole premise of it. After October 7th, I kind of refocused what I was doing because I just felt I had to. I am still doing that, but I'm very focused now on helping widows of the war. Yeah. I think there's so much we have to learn from each other. And I feel that very strongly in my heart.
and this may be something you disagree with or not agree with, but this is my personal, this is my personal viewpoint. The Manichaeans had the duality of the Old Testament, New Testament God, that they were basically two different personalities. But, reading both, I don't see that. I just see the same God. And that's kind of my viewpoint on it, that there's just one God, there's always been the same.
Of course, there's always one God. The problem is that throughout the centuries, throughout history, many people, and you see that with the jihadis today, that say, oh, they do things in the name of God and think that, and that's the problem. There's a very good book written by a Jewish philosopher, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, called Not in My Name. And it's all about radicalism and doing things in the name of God. And so, I agree. There is only one God, and I agree. Christians and we believe in the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and whatever you're going to call God. But I think we all believe in the God of the Creator of the world, the God of goodness, the God who tells you to love people like yourselves. And it's all one.
I know maybe next time we could talk more about, because we talked about strategy and military strategy a lot last time. That was good.
Yeah.
But you're just making me, and I'm asking these questions really for me. I don't know if everybody listening, but so the people doing things in the name of God, in the 10 Commandments, it says, thou shalt not, the King James, take the name of the Lord in vain. What does that mean? What does it mean to take the Lord's name in vain in your estimation?
Yeah. So on a very simple level, it's one of the reasons why we don't pronounce the name of God as it appears in the Bible. We say the word Hashem, which literally means the name. It's kind of like calling your parents' friends Mr. and Mrs. and not by their first name, because it's a sign of respect. So on that level, not taking God's name in vain is that's a very simple, basic level. But of course, on a much deeper level, it means not to abuse the name of God in ways that it's not meant to be used. Whether it's swearing falsely, whether it's torturing, whether it's hurting other people, and doing it, so to speak, in God's name. And I think, in my understanding of the verse, you're taking God's name in vain. That's not what God wanted you to do. Now, it's not always simple, by the way, because we all want to feel that I'm living a godly life, and it kind of can get confusing because we also like at the same time to justify our own behavior, and it's sometimes we can confuse ourselves even in thinking I'm doing something that God would approve of. And sometimes it's good to have a friend or someone you trust that can call you out, because when it's a stranger, we push back. But and the idea of in the Bible, when you have this, it says that the woman is your wife. It's supposed to be an ezer kenegdo, it says in Hebrew. And how they translate in English, sometimes they say she'll be a helpmate. But the word ezer in Hebrew, it means a powerful helper, and kenegdo means against you. So which is it? Is your wife supposed to be with you on your team or against you? And so the biblical commentators say, if you're following the path of God, then the two of you are working together. But if not, then she is going to be the one to call you out.
Then you're opposites. Yeah.
Exactly. But the word ezer, and I have a whole class on this, helper, right? That's a translate English helpmate. We think of maybe Alice from the Brady Bunch, but it doesn't mean a helper like your house cleaner. The word ezer in Hebrew, if you study it throughout its usages in the Bible, it's only used in two different contexts. One as help you receive from God, okay? Like God, Ezri, my help is from the Lord, maker of heaven and earth. The Hebrew word used in that verse in Psalms is ezer, right? Same word that's used when it refers to the woman. The other time the word is used when it refers to a great military strength, right? Help from like a great general. So when it uses the word by a woman, it's referring to as divine insight, that a woman has certain insights that a man may not have. Like when God says to Abraham, everything that Sarah said, listen to her. Right. So she has the word ezer. She can have an insight, and sometimes she'll be neged. Sometimes she will be against you. And that word neged, against, if you study it, like, for example, it said the Israelites encamped opposite the mountain. They were in front of it, right? And so sometimes a woman is standing side by side. That's the imagery, and you're walking together with God. And sometimes she's standing opposite you, like Mount Sinai was. You're there, and it's opposite you. And she says, "Hey, this is not right. You need to be doing this." And so that is the relationship between husband and wife, and it's found in those simple two words: "Ezer kenegdo." She's a helper, and she's against you. And so that's also in my book, I think. I'll give you, JP, give him a copy of the book. Give him a free copy.
We've got one here, and then
Your mom has a bunch, so give him a free copy.
Okay,
let him read it.
We'll do that.
Curious to know your thoughts on it.
I think that my viewpoint is there's a lot of wisdom and truth there, and that I'm saying the right nomenclature for you, but the Old Testament is one of the most layered things ever. There's just little details in there, like you just talked about, little meanings of words, and it tells you it. And we're we're the same kind of people as there were back then, right? That human beings are human beings, right? Same truths are kind of timeless. So those little details always pick up for me. And as the older I get, and the more I read, the more I see the just kind of the wisdom and the truth there, the timelessness to it. Just like what you were talking about, like that your wife is your helper, just like army reinforcements. Just like when you ask God for help, guess what? He sent you some help. And sometimes that help says, "Let's do this together," and sometimes that help says, "You better stop it." Right.
Exactly.
So what I heard out of all that is my wife is right sometimes. Oh man, don't tell her that.
It's interesting. If you look at the book of Genesis, what you see in the husband-wife relationship is that whenever they're about to make a huge mistake, a woman steps forward to the forefront, says, "Do this," and then she steps back. Like, for example, you see with Isaac, and what happens? Rebecca says, "No. Jacob is the one who the covenant's going to pass through, not Esau." We see Sarah do it. We see this in the relationship between Leah and Rachel. We see this. The women are powerful. Now, it's also interesting. I don't mean this as a knock on any other faith, but Judaism is the only faith that has founding fathers and founding mothers. In Christianity, you have Jesus. In Islam, you have Muhammad. And you have in Hinduism, I think you have Buddha. Judaism, you have Abraham, Isaac, Jacob. Then you have Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. So we have the founding mothers, which are seen, as very, very powerful roles.
That's an archetypical thing. My daughter watches a lot of sci-fi movies and kind of scary movies, and that's what she always says. That every plot is the same. There's a guy who's bullheaded, and he's like, "We're doing this thing," and there's a girl who says up and goes, "That's a bad idea. Don't do that." And he's like, "You're just a girl." And then they get into a whole bunch of trouble. All kinds of mayhem ensues because they didn't listen to her. And she's like, "That's the plot of every scary movie." Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
Rabbi, just as we wrap up, one other thing that I found interesting in the Bible for those that, maybe don't read it like they should. And I definitely probably need to read mine even more, but I used to focus a lot on the New Testament because obviously that's very important to us for the Christian faith. But then God really convicted me about you need to understand all the history of the Jewish people and from the beginning of time, everything. So I started a Bible plan to read it in a year and a half. And of course, started in Genesis, going all the way through. If you read through the story of Moses and then going into Joshua taking over and all that, when they're getting ready to cross into the promised land, it geographically references where the land is. So you can easily correlate where the land that promised or the land that was promised to the Jewish people by God, it's geographically referenced in the Bible.
Yeah, that's why I love being a tour guide here. I tell people, I said, you live in what's called the Bible Belt. I said, but we live in the real Bible Belt. This is where the Bible happened, where 90% of the Bible happens here. Very few stories from either the Hebrew Bible, the New Testament. Very few take place outside of the land of Israel.
Yeah, like Egypt.
Yep.
Yeah,
Ezekiel,
a little bit Ezekiel.
In Babylon.
Right? Yeah. Babylon. But even those, the episodes in those areas are relatively short compared to the length of the Bible. The book of Genesis, you're talking about 2,000 years about, and from the time Abraham enters, and most of the book of Genesis is from, Abraham, the story of Abraham, that begins already in end of chapter 11, I think. So most of the stories in the Bible are going to take place in the land of Israel. By the way, what you said, I want to mention something. Yep. And for the reader of the Christian Bible, the New Testament, if you don't understand, I would argue, or haven't read the Hebrew Bible, it's like reading, especially for a Christian. Okay, let's put it this way. A Jew looks at the Hebrew Bible, and when it ends, to us, it says the end. To a Christian, it says to be continued. Now, for the Christian, if it says to be continued into the New Testament, then how can you not have read the first part? Yep. And I'll give you an example. And I do this when I'm guiding Christian groups here in Israel. When we go to the Galilee, and it says in the Christian Bible where a woman comes to Jesus and grabs the corner of his garment, right? She grabs a corner of his garment. And now the Jewish reader, what is the corner of the garment? That refers to the book of Numbers, chapter, I want to say 15, where it says, you shall put tzitzit or fringes, I'll try to show them to you right here, fringes on the corner of your garments, if you could see on your screen. Mm-hmm. And so that's a biblical commandment. And so there is no question that Jesus would have been wearing these, what's called tzitzit, on the corner of the garment. Now, when you see this hanging down, this is very easy to grab onto. So if you have strings on four corners of your garments, dragging across the floor, and she grabbed at his garment, it's very hard to grab a garment. Try grabbing someone's shirt if they're wearing a polo shirt hanging out. It's much more difficult. But when you have strings coming out of your garment, that is likely what it's referring to in the New Testament, the tzitzit, that the Bible says in the book of Numbers, chapter 15, that without question that Jesus would have been wearing, every Jew was wearing. Another example that I find fascinating in the New Testament, where it says when Jesus enters Jerusalem, it says the people were chanting Hosanna, correct? Hosanna is a Hebrew phrase, Hoshana, which means save me. Now, that phrase, Hoshana, Hosanna, is, if you ask any Jew, when do we use that phrase? It's used on the holiday of Sukkot, on tabernacles. Yet when Jesus enters, and it's more associated than it turns into Passover, the Holy Week and Passover. So I find it fascinating. How is it that the people are chanting Hoshana, Hosanna, which is Sukkot, tabernacles, and yet the Holy Week, and it ends with the Last Supper? Now, I've said this to many pastors, and I said, I don't know if this would be considered heretical, but it's very possible that the New Testament contracted a story that took place over 6 months between tabernacles and Passover and contracted into a much shorter story. Because the word Hosanna would never have been shouted by Jews on Passover. It's associated, like I said, with tabernacles. So I said this to a bunch of pastors, and one of them got back to me. He actually found some Christian commentator, I can't tell you who it was, I don't remember the name, I could probably find it, that actually said what I just told you.
Contraction.
So exactly.
Or it could be.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry. I was saying to the Jewish ear, that's what we hear when I read that story.
And to the Christian ear, we hear Passover and we think that's a story of being saved.
Right.
And we see save me, and we say, who else would you say save me to besides the Savior?
Right.
Right. So the color of the Jewish experience throughout the Old Testament, throughout the Torah, the Tanakh, right? It's not like there's like suddenly a barrier, right? It appears, it gives historical context, it gives the language context, it gives the dialogue, so many things to it. Anyhow, there's a lot to talk about.
I appreciate it. I think we're gonna.
It's been definitely great talking about this, as it always is. And if you want to be smarter by reading this book, and we've outlined so much of it, and this is why you need to read it. Rabbi Moshe, where can everybody get a copy of the Secrets of the Hebrew Bible that you wrote?
Well, they can go to the website, which is right up on your screen, secretsofthehebrewbible.org. And you can grab yourself a copy. If you want to hear about what we're doing with the widows, you can check out our Facebook page, facebook.com/Global Israel Alliance. We'd love to hear from you guys.
Such an important effort too.
So JP, don't forget to give Bill a copy, and either when you're back on, or you can let Jay or whatever, send me a message. I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
No, I enjoyed talking about it with you. Very excellent discussion. So
good,
thanks for
thank you.
Yeah,
enjoyed the discussion very much.
Thanks. Enjoy your time.
Have a great weekend, guys. All the best.
See you later.
Okay, take care. Bye-bye.
All right, you want to go do a commercial?
Yeah, we'll do a commercial, and then we've got some other stuff to talk about. And it's going to definitely be the next 30 minutes. It's going to be very interesting before Mr. Ron Calzone. Am I saying his name right?
Yeah, Ron Calzone. You never met him before?
I have not yet. No,
Ron,
so this is going to be an experience for me.
Ron, I'll tell you about Ron when we come back. Yeah.
Okay, looking forward to it. So we're going to take a quick commercial break, and we'll be right back.
With warmer temperatures right around the corner and allergies ramping up, now's the time to get those AC units serviced. At Hartley's, we pride ourselves in offering outstanding service with fast response times. With proper maintenance, you can make those hot days be a lot cooler and remove those pesky allergens that always seem to find their way into your home. Call us today so you can be living a much cooler and healthier life. Hartley's, community born, community raised, community serving.
Call Hartley's Climate Control today at 573-368-3163.
Never be too coy to tell your friends and family about koi sushi and hibachi. Celebrate the best Chinese-Japanese restaurant in the Midwest. Call 573-426-5551 to make a reservation or order takeout. Locally owned, 1808 North Bishop, Rolla, Missouri.
We can sum up McDonald's new crispy chicken sandwich in one word: crispy. But also juicy and tender. Okay, it's crispy, juicy, tender. All one word? But then, also pickle. Oh, and potato bun, which is two words. Okay, we can't sum up our new crispy chicken sandwich in one word, so you'll just have to try it to understand it. Order ahead on the McDonald's app at participating McDonald's. Ba-da-ba-ba-ba.
Merrill's Quarry and Asphalt, 40 years serving cities, counties, and everyday businesses with driveways for people who live and work in our little piece of heaven right smack dab in the middle of America. Call 573-578-9101 for your free estimate of rocking, rolling, paving, driveways, sealing, and striping too. That's 573-578-9101 for your free estimate.
Your home is your castle, you don't need unwanted hassle. Don't let those creatures move in to stay. Let us protect your investments, that's what we're all about. Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
Plank is locally owned and family operated right here in Rolla, a Google preferred business. Our customer service and your satisfaction is our #1 goal. So call Plank today at 368-3333.
Plank Termite and Pest Control will save the day.
Busy schedule? Let your locally owned Price Chopper help you save time with online shopping. It's easy. Sign up to tcmarkets.com or download our mobile app in the App Store or Google Play. Create an account and browse through the categories and choose the items you need. When you place your order, your personal shopper will get all of the items you've selected, taking the same care you would and following your notes. We offer free curbside pickup, so you don't even have to get out of your car. Start your online order today and no online shopping fee for a limited time. Go to tcmarkets.com or download our mobile app to get started. Price Chopper. Fresher savings every day. insurance going up like crazy? Daniel and Henry Insurance is one of the largest private insurance companies in the world. Richard Boyette, 314-444-5011. He's my guy at Daniel and Henry for 10 years. Business or personal, call Richard at 314-444-5011. He's the best.
Greetings, everyone. I'm Rob Willis, an author and writer, and I write nature books. I live here in a ranch on the Ozarks and have published many books over 2 decades of writing. The Trout Adventure series of books was about traveling the world with a camera and a fly rod. The Last Buffalo in Kansas is a true story about one family's journey through 100 years of American history. A couple of years ago, I decided to write a children's nature series of books. 2 of those books have been published. The Adventures of Dog is a story about a puppy that grows up on a ranch in the Ozarks and has fabulous adventures. The Adventures of the Cats R Us Gang is about a group of cats that band together to protect the ranch from a dastardly group of raccoons. Wonderful stories for children, wholesome, about nature and the Ozarks. They're available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and in Walmart even. They're available locally at Reader's Depot. Hey, take a look at them. Thanks a lot.
At Town & Country Bank, we are committed to providing exceptional service to our customers. We do more than just provide loans for our community. We help make dreams become reality. Whether it's a new home, farm, business, or a new car, we would love the opportunity to help. Stop by one of our 2 Rolla locations and let our friendly lending team remind you how special hometown banking can be. Smart, friendly solutions. Town & Country Bank, member FDIC, equal housing lender.
All right, that's a commercial break there. Shout out to our sponsors again for sponsoring the show and supporting us financially. I do have a couple clips that Bill was wanting to play here, so we're going to get these queued up. They are some videos, so we're going to get these where you not only can hear them, but where you can also see who's talking. The first one's going to be from Josh Howerton here, so let me go and share the screen, and then we got a couple others that Bill wanted to share, I believe, from his campaign page. To talk about some different issues, and we'll come back right after these are done playing.
Obviously is dying of pancreatic cancer right now. And you want to talk about a guy showing everybody how a Christian man dies, you watch Ben Sass right now. That dude is going everywhere, and he is testifying to the goodness of Jesus Christ. Somebody asked him about it, and Ben Sass's response was, there is not one rogue cell in the universe.
I make no comparison to what you're going through, but there was a moment on 9/11 at the World Trade Center that I knew I was dead. And in that lightning flash of an instant, only thing that crossed my mind was leaving my family behind. And I wonder how you reconcile that.
I'm incredibly blessed. My wife, Melissa, we've been married 31 years. We're going to be apart for a time. But she's tough and gritty and theologically rooted, and she's going to be fine. My daughters are 24 and 22, and they're extraordinary. I want to walk them down the aisle when they get married. That's not likely to be. That's not the math of my time card. My son, he's 14, and he's going to be fine. He'll have other wise men and women to put a hand on his shoulder. But I'm super bummed to not be there at 16 and 18 and 20 years old in his life. I want to give him more advice than he wants, and I want to put my arm on his shoulder, and I want his shoulders to get taller. But it's not a surprise to God.
And God, you believe, has a plan.
Absolutely. There are no maverick molecules in the universe.
He's dying of pancreatic cancer because there is not one rogue. And that's a comfort for him.
Yes.
Because he knows no matter what bad thing is happening to me, it's in God's hands and he can redeem it for something good. Amen. Ben Sass.
Wow. Yeah, definitely kind of just brings a lot of things into perspective for sure. And now I want to jump to a couple of things that Bill wanted to share here from his campaign. And again, these are going to be video clips. And so I'm going to go ahead and make sure that these are going to be shared properly so that you guys can see and hear them. And so a couple of videos here from Bill Hardwick for Senate from his campaign page.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Bill Hardwick. I represent House District 122, and I'm here to present House Bill 1686. House Bill 1686 would prevent government COVID vaccination mandates on government workers and on Missourians at large by the government. It would protect public school students, teachers, and police officers from government COVID vaccination requirements. In addition, it would clarify the existing rules already required by federal and state law that private organizations represent the religious and medical accommodations of their employees. It would expand the universe of conscientious objections to include non-religious Missourians and make it clear a written recommendation from a licensed physician is sufficient for a medical exemption. The point of this bill is not whether or not you ought to take the COVID vaccine or continue to take the boosters. The point of this bill is that you should have the right to make that decision for yourself. This bill is not about what medicines you should take. It's about what rights you should have. It doesn't stop anyone or make it any more difficult for anyone to take a COVID vaccine or a booster. Right now, the vaccines are widely available for free to the general public. Rather, it talks about who should take that risk and make that decision, and let them make that decision free from coercion, which comes with its own cost and potential for future harms. On the issue of religious exemptions, I will concede to you they're not appropriate in all circumstances. For example, you could not have a religious exemption for obeying the speed limit. But I would say in the arena of deciding what goes into your body and what you take into your body, that seems like an appropriate place to have religious exemptions. Forbidding discrimination based on those religious beliefs is already forbidden by federal and state law. And I believe that we should grant these exemptions insofar as they should be allowed liberally. If you accept my premise, I hope you do, that a body and what goes into your body is a good area for your religious beliefs to be accommodated, I hope you consider this. The current legal standard for whether or not you get a religious accommodation is not whether or not the belief is true, but rather that it is a sincerely held belief. So what is our plan as a body, as a government body, and as a court, future courts deciding whether or not a religious exemption is valid, to look into a man's heart and determine what is between him and the Almighty? Maybe the greatest argument against individual accommodation is in the military, but even there, where the president has plenary power to order and control the military, last week, a federal judge in Biden, or Navy SEALs versus Biden, issued a preliminary order that the Navy cease its policy of blanket exemptions, writing, "The COVID-19 pandemic provides the government no license to abrogate these freedoms. There is no COVID-19 exception to the First Amendment. There is no military exclusion from our Constitution. Service members have sacrificed so much, and we shouldn't ask anyone, whether it's a soldier or whether it's a private employee, to completely forfeit their right to honor God according to their conscience." James Madison said, "A function of government is to protect private property interest." Your home is your private property. Your body is an even more intimate private property that you possess. And as Madison said, conscience is the most sacred of all property. And with that, I'll open myself to any questions the committee may have.
All right, so they're Bill Hardwick from his Bill Hardwick for State Senate campaign page. We're going to go ahead and stop sharing there. We got one more, and I want to make sure that we get this brought up correctly. And I believe it's right down here. So we're going to get this shared, and then let me go ahead and share the screen real quick so everybody can make sure and see the page okay. Whole process to this when it comes to making sure our reels play, but here we go. Another video from Bill Hardwick for State Senate.
I'd like to speak on the bill.
Proceed, gentlemen.
Mr. Speaker, I oppose this bill. I'm going to lay out the arguments why, but I want to address the foremost thing that should be obvious to us. We did all promise to uphold the Constitution. And the reasons why we have these constitutional boundaries on how we make laws and what kind of laws we make is not for times when it's convenient or inconvenient, not for times when it's our favorite companies or companies that we don't like we're deciding on things, but just for situations like this, where we're about to pass a law that's patently unfair and unjust for the citizens of Missouri. And so it's been said, okay, well, sometimes we ignore bills that we know are unconstitutional, which a lot of us in this room agree this bill is unconstitutional, and we say that's up to the courts to decide. But the reason why the legislature keeps passing bills that we know are unconstitutional is because members in both chambers keep voting for bills that we know are unconstitutional. The only way to stop the legislature from passing unconstitutional bills is for us to start voting no, we know a bill is unconstitutional. Let's go over some reasons why this bill violates the Constitution. It's been mentioned the Constitution's prohibition on direct funding or lending to private enterprise, individuals, or associations. Why is that in the Missouri Constitution? Because it prohibits tax dollars that are collected at large from the people from benefiting a certain group, a certain business that's our favorite. And the reason why the Constitution forbids that is because the drafters of that language knew that eventually the legislature would appropriate money to the people who we consider our friends at the expense of everybody else in the state, instead of appropriate money or spend money for the good of all, the general welfare of our state. And there's a problem with that too. How do we decide which businesses are the state's favorite? And how do we decide which businesses that we don't fund? And that's a question that a lot of our constituents back home are asking us. They're saying, I'm struggling, my family's struggling, our business is about to go under, our family farm is about to go under. How do you decide to fund that enterprise and say that enterprise should survive, should be subsidized, should be made to stay in Missouri, and you don't care what happens to my small business, and you don't care what happens to my family? That's precisely why there's a prohibition on that direct funding to private enterprise. Special law has been mentioned, or prohibition on enacting special laws. Now, I've heard the argument that subsidizing the Chiefs and Royal Stadium is a special law in itself. I think that's an interesting argument. And whether you agree with that or not, you probably have to admit that there's a pretty blatant special law problem in this bill, which is some counties have a total property tax freeze. Some counties have a cap on the growth of their property taxes, and some counties get no property tax relief whatsoever. The reason why the Constitution prohibits special laws is so we don't make laws that are unfair for different citizens of the state, arbitrarily and capriciously based on the whims of legislators that adversely affect people. And this definitely has disproportionate adverse effects throughout the state. In the counties where there's a freeze, that is the existing funding mechanism which we have not changed to pay for schools, local services, county services. And so they're going to have a disruptive variable to their funding mechanisms that we haven't solved. We've created a confusing problem for them. In the counties where there's no benefit, which include, incidentally, Wright County, Laclede County, Marys County, Dent County, Phelps County, and Pulaski County, where I represent, those citizens will see their property taxes skyrocket as they pay for the brunt of the services that are required to be provided to the people in their area. So how is that fair? How is that constitutional? It's not fair, and it violates the Constitution, which is precisely why we, if we're upholding our oath and our promise that we told our constituents, should vote the bill down, and then we should come up with a framework, not under the deadline, not under pressure, not under if you don't do this, the world's going to end. Come up with a framework that's fair for the people of Missouri and works. We talked about whether or not this is a single subject bill. The reason why we have a single subject requirement is so we can take big issues and we can debate them, we can amend them, we can think through them. We cannot send out things haphazardly into the state that have these consequences we don't know about. And in this case, we package a lot of issues together in order for the votes to be garnered in the Senate. And in this case, we package together a lot of things that are questionable that they would pass on their own. But the whole of the whole bill, this body, it seems like, will vote for. How does that make any sense? When you say a state representative can't amend a bill, can't be involved in the process of the bill, can't try to fix a bill, can't argue that a bill is unconstitutional and hurts the people of Missouri, you're saying that that office the state representative holds is irrelevant. And when you do that, you're saying the people that state representative represents are irrelevant because they sent the people here to look after what happens to their property taxes, what happens to their livelihood, to be good stewards of the state's money, of the taxpayers' money, to make sure that the protections in the Constitution on bills are actually enforced. We are the guardians of whether or not constitutional bills come out of this body or not. We constantly say, I know it's unconstitutional, but I want this thing, but there's a political reason. Wouldn't it be better if we just started in the House voting down bills that we knew were unconstitutional and then writing bills that conformed and comported with the requirements of the U.S. and Missouri constitutions? I think that's a good idea, and we have an opportunity like we've never had before because something is so blatantly unconstitutional as this. Let me make another point. Why is it bad? We say we don't want the government picking winners and losers. Why do we not want the government picking winners and losers? Why is that so bad? Because when the government determines, when it assumes arrogantly knowledge that it doesn't have, when it decides for you who gets to succeed and who gets to fail, it creates outcomes that it doesn't know what the outcomes will be. The government is not smart enough or in a position or has the role to decide whether or not your business should be successful or should fail. Your business should be successful or fail based on the product you create, based on the service you provide, based on how you benefit customers and people in the community. But the message that we're sending all businesses in the state is that your business succeeds or fails not based on how good of a business you are, but whether or not you have garnered favor from the state. And so the system is fundamentally unfair, not based on the market, not based on the decision of everyday citizens. It's based on how much you cozy up to the government. And why is it that whenever the government determines outcomes, it seems that the people who cozy up closest to the government get the best outcomes? That is exactly what people in the state are upset about. They're upset about their lives, their grocery bills, their opportunities are not being looked after. Why time and time again, the people who come to the Capitol and seem like they become the best friends and curry the best favor from the state of Missouri get the best results. And that is, in its essence, unfair. And fairness is the essence of the reason why we have these prohibitions on bills that directly fund private enterprise, that favor one group of Missouri citizens over the other, that cobble together subjects and purposes that weren't originally intended in the bill. I think that we should consider that when the government is trying to pick winners and losers, that when it's trying to drive forward who gets to succeed, that the people who say, hey, look at my business, my farm, they have a distaste for that. It's not our job to make a certain business succeed or fail. It's our job to protect people's liberty in the state and to create a fair playing field for any business to succeed. It's our job to create conditions. And it's been said too, okay, here's one business, it's our favorite corporation. We love sports, so we'll do anything to keep them here. What about the next other business that says, if you want me to stay in Missouri, if I don't go under, I'm too big to fail, I need this and this and this from the government. And it cascades from problem to problem. We'd be better off as policymakers if we made Missouri a state generally beneficial to all people to live here and businesses to thrive here. And then businesses will want to be in the state of Missouri. The tax climate, the regulatory climate, the liberty climate will be so that businesses can stay here and succeed here. And we won't have this problem every couple years where there's another business that says, please subsidize us, Missouri legislature. That seems like it makes a whole lot of sense to me. So there's a lot of reasons why I'm voting no on this bill. I'm going to vote no on this bill because nobody has made an argument to me this bill is constitutional. I haven't heard an argument yet that this bill is going to be upheld by the courts. I've only heard arguments that we should ignore the fact that it's constitutional. But if we should ignore the fact that it's constitutional, then why do we swear an oath to uphold the Constitution? What's the point of that? What was the point of what we said? We said we would hold the Missouri and U.S. constitutions. And now we're saying not because it's inconvenient. I'm also going to vote for this bill because it doesn't make sense. There are things that people rely on for that money that are being disrupted, and that doesn't make sense. And then there are people that are going to see their property taxes skyrocket with no relief, including the counties I represent, and that doesn't make sense. So me representing my district is voting no on this bill. And so I'd ask everybody to think about that. Instead of thinking about today and the pressure that's on you today to vote for this bill, think about the long-term consequences of us continuing to ignore the Constitution. And think about a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, how you're going to defend to your constituents that you levied something like this upon them. You won't be able to. It's not really defensible. The world in Jeff City is different than the world outside Jeff City. So look at the Constitution and think about whether or not you're being fair to the people of Missouri. And then I ask you to vote no on this bill. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Very well said.
Well, if you're tired of listening to me yet, I think I want to read some more stuff. I was actually thinking about the things the rabbi was saying before I came up here.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how do you answer stuff. And I just think I'm going to read. If some people who like to listen to me read, for the value of that, I'm going to read a little bit and tell you about this Old Testament passages, some of my favorites. And then we'll do some commentary on them. That'll take us to the 10 o'clock hour, okay?
Yep.
So the first thing I'm going to read, and just bear with me, but it might be kind of interesting to some people, is from Judges, the story of Samson. So context on it, Samson, like other characters in the Bible, had a special covenant with God. Covenant means they exchange promises, right? So what Samson got, lawyers talk about contracts, what you trade. You make a promise and you fulfill your part of the bargain. So what Samson got was he was strong. He got strength, to fight. And his covenant with God was that he didn't cut his hair. So if you want to come on in, Ron, and sit down, do you mind if I just finish this segment? I haven't cut my hair in a while yet. I'm going to read this. I'm going to read some stuff, Ron, and then we can talk to you if you want. So I'm going to read this passage. So then the context of it is too, there's parts in the Bible where Samson's parents are like, why are you doing this? There's a little sentence that says, just like those little details, but they did not know it was of the Lord because they wanted to cause a confrontation with the Philistines. So here's the passage. And then she called Samson, the Philistines are upon you. And he awoke from his sleep and thought, I'll go as before and shake myself free. But he did not know that the Lord had left him. Then the Philistines seized him and gouged out his eyes and took him down into Gaza, binding him with bronze shackles. They set him to grinding in the prison. And this might be my favorite verse. But the hair on his head began to grow again after it had been shaved. Now the rulers of the Philistines assembled to offer a great sacrifice to Dagon their god and to celebrate, saying, Our God has delivered Samson, our enemy, into our hands. And when the people saw him, they praised their God, saying, Our God has delivered our enemy into our hands, the one who laid waste to our land and multiplied our slain. And they were in high spirits, and they shouted, Bring Samson out to entertain us. So they called Samson out of the prison, and he performed for them. When they stood him among the pillars, Samson said to the servant who held his hand, Put me where I can feel the pillars that support the temple, that I may lean against them. Now the temple was crowded with men and women, and all the rulers of the Philistines were there, on the roof. And there were about 3,000 men and women watching Samson perform. Then Samson prayed to the Lord, O sovereign Lord, remember me. O God, please strengthen me once more, and let me with one blow get revenge on the Philistines for my 2 eyes. Then Samson reached toward the 2 central pillars on which the temple stood, bracing himself against them, his right hand on one, his left hand on the other. And Samson said, Let me die with the Philistines. And he pushed with all his might and came down to the rulers and to all the people on it. I like that verse because there's a lot in there, that his hair grows back, that God's redemptive, that no matter what Samson does, God's faithful. And to me, the story is a story that it's not really about Samson or the Philistines, even though it's about Samson and the Philistines. It's about that God's still sovereign and God has a plan and God has a way of working what he wants to work out. I'll read one more thing because we got Ron here, and then we'll make sure you get a whole half hour. The context of this is an Old Testament story, but it's told by a New Testament guy in Acts. The context is Stephen saying things, and the powers that be don't like it. So they bring accusations against Stephen and bring charges against him. And Stephen, in his monologue, and this is particularly important to me, I think it's relevant to what I'm doing. Stephen, in his monologue, is giving the history of the fathers of faith, and that's his answer to say that you guys need to change what you're doing. You're stiff-necked people. So this is one more passage. Stephen says this back. When Moses was 40 years old, he decided to visit his fellow Israelites. He saw one of them being mistreated by an Egyptian. So he went to his defense and avenged him by killing the Egyptian. Moses thought that his own people would realize that God was using him to rescue them, but he did not. The next day, Moses came upon 2 Israelites who were fighting, and he tried to reconcile them by saying, Men, you are brothers. Why do you want to hurt each other? But the man who was mistreating the other pushed Moses aside and said, Who made you ruler and judge over us? Do you want to kill me as you killed the Egyptian yesterday? And when Moses heard this, he fled to Midian, where he settled as a foreigner and had 2 sons. And after 40 years had passed, an angel appeared to Moses in flames of a burning bush in the desert near Mount Sinai. And when he saw this, he was amazed at the sight. And he went over to look more closely. He heard the Lord's voice. I am the God of your fathers, of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Moses trembled with fear and did not dare look. Then the Lord said to him, Take off your sandals. The place where you are standing is holy ground. I have indeed seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their groaning and come down to set them free. Now come, I will send you back to Egypt. That's a powerful story too, I think, about God calling Moses back to Egypt, and Moses running away from the situation because he was scared. But it was God that saw the injustice that was happening to the people and told Moses he had to come back and be part of God's plan. I'm going to stop there because we got somebody who's going to tell us more stuff about things. I'm going to introduce. Can we get a entourage in here? Applause, ladies and gentlemen. Ron Calzone. Ron, one of the things we have in common.
That's typical of me. Fake applause. That's expected. So.
I was going to say I have the same situation wherever I go. There's this manufactured applause.
That's right.
Okay, so I know you want to talk about some amendments, and we're going to take the whole half hour to do it. But just for the listeners' edification, Can you tell us just for a couple minutes about your background, where you were raised, what your business background is? Just tell us about who's Ron Calzone.
Okay, well, I live in Marys County, just about 35 minutes north here because the river's in the way, Gasconade River's in the way. And I've been there for about half a century, where I've started a small manufacturing business. We are metal fabricators, steel and aluminum and stainless steel fabricators. I also run some cattle, so I've got a small cattle ranch there. And so I've been an entrepreneur all my life. I've never drawn a W-2 from anyone other than myself. So I've been self-employed all my life. For about the last 3 decades, though, I've spent 2-3 days a week during session at the Missouri Capitol as an unpaid citizen watchdog of the legislative process. And so I've learned a lot about the legislative process, what's good, what's bad, and it's mostly bad, I would suggest. And I started with some friends, I started an organization called Missouri First almost those 3 decades ago. Our focus is promoting constitutional governance, economic freedom, and personal liberty in general. We often take on orphan issues, so long before COVID and the COVID tyranny and forced jabs and those sort of things, we were fighting for healthcare freedom, particularly the right for parents to decide what vaccines and whether or not to give vaccines to their kids and some of those kind of things. But more recently, it's still been a decade and a half or more, we've been really concerned about the way the legislature ignores the constitutional limits on their powers.
Yeah, tell me about that. What's the most egregious way the legislature ignores the Constitution?
Well, Article 3 of the Missouri Constitution defines the role of the legislature. It places limits on the legislature. It says that, for instance, when you pass a bill, you've got to determine what the subject of the bill is at the outset when you file the bill. That subject has to be clearly expressed in the title of the bill. And you can't change the purpose of a bill throughout the legislative process. It says you have to have one subject per bill. And I know that's what upsets a lot of people about what happens in D.C. They log roll a bunch of bills together, and we end up with legislation that each individually would not have garnered a majority vote of the people's representatives. So you end up with a bunch of laws that the people really didn't consent to. And since 1865 and 75, we've had a prohibition on that sort of thing in the Missouri Constitution. But the legislature largely ignores it. And the reason they ignore it is because in order to do something about it, somebody's got to have the bandwidth, they've got to have the interest, they have to have the standing to take it to court and go through a very arduous process that often takes years to get the courts to say, well, we believe the citizen's right and the legislature's wrong. And of course, the courts have a thumb on the side of the scale of the legislature. I mean, they literally say that they give the legislature deference. So it's easy for the legislature to get away with ignoring the Constitution. Another way that the Constitution is ignored is we have clauses in the Constitution that says you can't confer public money to private parties. So, a bill that was passed last year was one that some people call the Stadium Bill, and it provides hundreds of millions of dollars potentially of subsidies to big ball teams, franchise like the Royals or the Kansas City Chiefs, I guess. Are they still in Kansas City, Missouri? Or the Kansas City?
They presently are, yeah.
They're still in Missouri, okay. But, so it was a bill that was designed for them, and it was going to give a whole bunch of public money for their private purposes. And the Constitution has forbidden that since the 1800s.
So let's say it's January 2027. You have Senator Ron Calzone in the Missouri State Senate. What do you do to fix it?
Well, I think that the Constitution is pretty clear. So the biggest problem, frankly, has been with the courts. The courts need to step up to the plate and do their job as a check on abuse of power by the legislature. But until they do that, the House and the Senate need to establish rules that they adhere to more clearly. And, I think, you and I have talked about this before. I think that you could come up with a test for amendments to a bill. And, again, the Constitution says that you have to establish the purpose of a bill from the very beginning when you file a bill. And it has to be in the subject of the bill. Purpose and subject might not be exactly the same thing, but the subject of the bill has to be established in that title. And so if you have an amendment that requires you to change the title and describe something other than it originally described, then that's a pretty good evidence that you have more than one subject in that bill, and that amendment doesn't fit the original subject of the bill. So that's one thing that I would do.
Okay. Anything else?
Well, I think in general, the problem that we have with the Missouri General Assembly is we have a top-down power structure.
Yeah.
So we have too much power in the hands of leadership. That would be on the House side, the Speaker and the Majority Floor Leader. On the Senate side, the President Pro Tem and the Majority Floor Leader there. Especially in the House, as you well know, the vast, pick a number, I don't know, 90%, 85% of the power is in the hands of those two people. And then most of the rest of the power is in the hands of chairs of committees. And then most of the rest of the reps are just minions. They're and I know a lot of reps would take exception to that. You might too. I don't know, but
a little bit.
But the fact of the matter is that unless you have a real backbone, and I've seen you have that backbone before, people vote with leadership. Republicans will vote with Republican leadership, and Democrats will vote with Democrat leadership. And if you buck leadership, oftentimes there's consequences. Which could include, as we found out a couple of years ago, losing your parking place and threats to lose your office. I mean, literally, leadership can give you a broom closet for an office, and so there's a lot of incentive. And of course, the main primary threat is that if you don't toe the line, your legislation is not going to move, and that's the threat, at least. So there's a lot of incentive to just toe the line and follow the leadership, which is, by the way, in my opinion, they're kind of like fish in a barrel for the big moneyed special interests. If you get the leadership to go a certain direction for whatever reason, the rest of the House is going to follow. The Senate's not quite that way. The Senate has gotten in the last few years more that way, I would suggest. But for somebody that has the independence and the backbone to stand up to leadership, the Senate is where they want to be.
Seems like you'd be more functional there than in the House.
I would never even consider running for the House.
If I could go back, I wouldn't have either. But I think I tried to do some good stuff while I was there. I think I had some good moments.
You had some moments where you told leadership, I'm just not going to do it, and I think that's important. Yeah.
And I rolled with it, and took my licks over it, and then went on to the next thing.
You actually seems to me like you survived better than some others. So Senator Mike Moon is my hero, and he's been there spent practically 8 years in the House. He came in on a special election, and I think he's in his 6th year in the Senate. Is that right? And,
he elected in 2020 in the Senate.
And so he's always taken a very principled stand, and he's paid the price for it. They marginalized him. He's in all that time, he's passed one bill.
It was a big one, though.
It was a big bill. It was a big bill. I had a little something to do with that bill.
Yeah, the SAFE Act.
And it was a very big bill. And part of the reason that they let him have that bill is it's kind of like everybody knew that there would be a lot of arrows in whoever held that bill. Mm-hmm. And the transgender community was not going to be kind, and they weren't kind. And he had the backbone to stand up. But my point is that they've made an example of him, and not a lot of people are willing to buck the system and follow his example. But right now, Senator Moon is there's a lawsuit called Moon v. State, mm-hmm. and that's the lawsuit that is challenging that bill. I talked about it, Senate Bill 3. By the way, one of the other things that I've done in more recent years is with some others. I've founded something called the Article 3 Institute. And so the Article 3 Institute is a nonprofit public interest corporation that is designed to educate about following the legislature, following the Constitution, and facilitating lawsuits, challenging bills when they don't. And so Senate Bill 3 is one we challenged. So Senator Moon is a plaintiff in that lawsuit. So it's styled Moon v. State. Representative Bryant Wolfen is a plaintiff, and myself. And so and then there's another challenge to a bill that Senator Moon and myself have intervened in. And so right now the Article 3 Institute has 3 bills that are in litigation, 2 in the Supreme Court and 1 in the Western Court of Appeals. And so Senator Moon may not have passed a lot of bills, but I look at when I started doing this almost 3 decades ago, there were maybe 8 statute books, mm-hmm. and now there are 20, 30 statute books.
Way too many.
30. Yeah, way too many. When do we say we have enough laws?
We have enough.
Yeah, we have way too many. And so I think it's fine for somebody to spend their career killing bad legislation and not just passing more laws that infringe on our liberty.
Yeah, I've been thinking about how I just need to catch up on my reading. There's a lot of classic books I haven't read, and
in the Senate.
yeah, if there were to happen, then I think I think there'd be more stuff to stop than stuff to pass. There's a lot of stuff to stop now.
Yeah, unfortunately, though, the Senate is becoming a little bit more like the House. And this is probably in the weeds for a lot of your listeners, but the House is so incredibly top down that leadership can decide whether whether the bill gets to the floor or not. But once the bill gets to the floor, does it get 5 minutes or does it get 50 minutes or 3 hours or 5 hours? And so they can do what's called the previous question. And so they can end debate anytime they want to. You get the floor leader in concert with the speaker, and they make those decisions, or the floor leader can do it himself for that matter. And that's not quite that way in the Senate. So in the Senate, traditionally in Missouri, we've had a standing filibuster concept. And so as you're alluding to, a senator can stand up and talk as long as they want to. They can hold the floor as long as they want to. They can speak on a motion one time, but they can do it as long as they want to. And as long as their bladder will hold out.
As long as they can hold out.
That's right. And so, but the thing is that's changing now. And so in the last 3 years, we've seen the previous question used more and more in the Senate. And for small government people like me, that's kind of disconcerting.
Right. It should be a bulwark. It's kind of the last defense for things that intrude upon liberty and violate the Constitution, or even substantively bad.
Right.
And to me, the whole appeal of the job is that, I get to speak indefinitely, finally, right in my life. Always cut off, always interrupted.
Look out, Senate, man.
I finally get to say all the things I need to say. So that's kind of a little bit of a draw for me. But also in the work of that, there's a bunch of stuff to stop.
Well, do you want to do that just so people can hear your voice, or do you have a
it's a win
objective?
It's a win-win for everyone. There's some things I think that have never been expressed effectively, and it'd be a chance to express them. And there are some things I think just get, even like if you agree with the maps and this is going to parlay well into Amendment 4, I think, where Amendment 4 and the 7-1 map in September of last year, even if you agree with them substantively, that procedure was awful, absolutely atrocious.
Yeah, Amendment 4 got 0 seconds of debate on the Senate floor.
Zero debate. So, just for that, let's stop and read it and have a discussion. There's just immediate value in that. But there's just a lot of stuff that just gets rammed through. You alluded to the financial interest that rammed it through. You alluded to, whatever factional interest that make that happen. There, a lot of the legislature it becomes very personal and petty. And that's something
Absolutely. That's unfortunate. It's you would think that we would be past middle school by the time we got to the state capitol.
I noticed my friends who had ran for Senate and went to the primary process, and they came in defensive immediately. And I always thought about why is that? And now I think, and that you observed it, I think that for some reason that, for many reasons, the primaries get so mean and attackative, right, and personal, that that it makes people say, I'm gonna give the people, if the victor, the one who survives it, all of them, everybody takes their attacks and they're personal and they're very emotional and it's stressful, but there's a real natural tendency if you win the primary, which who knows who'll do that, but if you win, to be like, I'm going to give them their comeuppance, and they come in with that attitude immediately defensive from the get-go.
So who's them? So
who's them?
Right. I'm in this district. I'm in the district that you're running for, and so I'm getting the flyers.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing the most offensive stuff coming from PACs.
Yeah.
Not candidates.
Right.
And I can see how there'd be a tendency to say, well, I won, and this PAC was not only were they opposing me, they can have an opinion, but they were dishonest and unfair and mean-spirited, and so I'm going to poke them back.
So I think that my point is that we should not do that. But the them is not the other candidates for sure. Just like you said, the them is there's some lobbying group that doesn't like you and some that may like you. And so if the person who wins, and it may be the system drives it this way, they make people be enemies with whatever. They come in and they go, I don't like that guy, that group that funded that PAC, that funded that mailer against me. So they come in with an immediate chip on their shoulder. And so instead of policy, what you're talking about, there's just this defensive attitude people have, and it creates this immediate factionalism, I think.
I noticed many years ago, and I'm trying to think of what entity it was. And there's more of the big money people do this than meets the eye. But rather than picking a winner, what some of the big donors will do is they'll give money to both sides.
Right.
And they'll give more money to the one they want to win, but they'll give money to both sides. And then so the fear of losing that support, even if it's less than the other guy got, is what helps keep them in line.
That's happening here too. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But on the other hand, I think there's times when there's just punishment. So I got a flyer the other day about this mean looking guy with a scary picture. His name was Bill Hardwick. And it said that he was against, I think it said against school choice or something like that. And there was a bill called Senate Bill 727 a couple years ago. That was an awful bill. It was one of these log rolled bills. It was unconstitutional on its face because it was more than one subject in the bill. It had from a conservative perspective and somebody that likes parents' rights and their educational choice for their kids, it was terrible because it empowered DESE. It gave more money, more power to DESE than ever. And so there were a lot of reasons to vote against that bill. At one point, the homeschool community, of which I'm part of, was concerned that it would affect their gun rights. There was a bad provision in there. And it was, maybe even less than 50-50 chance it would affect their gun rights. But we had probably the best gun rights constitutional attorney in the state look at it. And he wrote what looked like an amicus brief explaining the history of gun rights in Missouri, our Article 3, Section 23, and the litigation over the 2014 amendment, which both he and I had something to do with, and said, this is problematic. This language is problematic in Senate Bill 727. It did get stripped out. But the point is that it was a terrible bill. It was a terrible bill, even if it had elements in it that were, ostensibly good for school choice. I would maintain they violated the Constitution because they used some what I think are illegal tax credits. But there's a lot of reasons to vote against that bill, even if you're a big school choice guy. And so, I think in that case, this, the object of this negative mailer, I think it was punishment.
It's retaliation.
Retaliation, yeah.
That's okay.
And so, and that'll keep, and the thing is that other people will see that and it will keep other people in line. There will be other people that are afraid
right.
to buck the people with the money.
Because they'll say, look what we did to Bill.
Yep.
Yeah, no, that's right. But,
or look what we've been doing to Mike Moon.
Or did to Mike Moon. Or whomever.
Or Bryant Wolfman. Yeah.
Or Bryant Wolfman. Yeah. He principally voted no.
Yeah.
Because he felt those bills violated the Constitution. Mm-hmm. And it's being spun as an attack on his integrity and his beliefs and his values.
Yeah, and of course it's just absolutely the opposite because guys like Mike and Bryant, they say I took this oath, and that means more than anything.
Right.
It doesn't matter how much I like the bill. I've seen Mike vote no on bills, and he liked every single thing in the bill, but it was more than one thing. It was more than one subject.
Yeah, no, I think it's good perspective. You want to talk about Amendment 4, though, a little bit, don't you?
I do, but that all really kind of ties into Amendment 4.
Yeah.
And so Amendment 4 is it was the HJR, bill, quote unquote bill, that was passed during the second special session, I believe it was, wasn't it, of 2025. And when not as many people are at the Capitol, not as many people are watching. And by the way, well, let me finish. It's styled IP reform or initiative petition reform. And it's born of a concern, a legitimate concern that we have a lot of people that are submitting initiative petitions and spending a lot of money collecting signatures and advertising them and putting stuff in the Constitution that are bad, even evil. Like the last Amendment 3, I call it 3.1, brought the worst abortion laws to Missouri we have in the whole country. Mm-hmm. And so there's definitely been some bad stuff that's been done to the initiative petition process. And so I've actually been on this issue since I looked the other day. I was writing about it since 2010. So for a long time, I wrote some of the statutes that deal with the initiative petition process. I used the initiative petition process in 2008 or 2008 to try to stop private use eminent domain. And raised about $1 million, collected 428,000 signatures for the two different amendments we needed, and missed ballot access by about 2,000 or 3,000 signatures in one congressional district. It was tough. It was, and it ended up being a 6-year journey. By the time we had all kinds of litigation, we had all kinds. It was an incredibly harrowing experience, and it cost me hundreds of thousands of dollars personally in that. So it wasn't just donors' money, which was actually I felt worse about the donors' money than my own money. But it was an incredible experience. But I've been involved in the initiative petition process and protecting it since 2010. And so this is supposed to be IP reform, and it's what I think is kind of a knee-jerk reaction to some bad stuff that's been done with IP. But I want to kind of frame the issue, if you will let me, with Amendment 4. So to me, there's kind of two questions to ask with respect to this. Number one, is the people's power to make an end run around the legislature and propose amendments to the Constitution that go on the ballot and their neighbors vote on, is that a good idea or not? And the second question is, should it be as easy as it is right now for the voters, once it's on the ballot, to amend the Constitution? Right now, all it takes is a simple majority vote. So if 50% plus one Missourians say yes to a proposed amendment, it goes in the Constitution, the fundamental document of the state. And the fact of the matter is that you can muster that 50% plus one just from the urban areas, more or less. So Kansas City, St. Louis, and Columbia, if you look at a map, it kind of looks like New England and California and Chicago, they have the ability, more or less, to change the Constitution. And that kind of leaves those of us that live in the rural area a little bit holding the bag. And so is that too low of a threshold? I would say, yes, it is too low of a threshold. To the previous question, I would say that the initiative petition process is not only good, but it's necessary for the preservation of a republic. But people will say, but isn't a republic a system in which you elect representatives and they go and they make the laws for you? Well, that's a means to an end. But the end, I would contest, and now you're a historical scholar, so you can contest this with me if you want to, but I think the concept of an American republic, more than anything, is the idea that all political power is vested in the people. That's, in fact, Article 1, Section 1 of the Missouri Constitution. So right after the Missouri Constitution acknowledges God as the supreme lawgiver of the universe, it says the people have all political power, and they, in paraphrasing, they loan it to government. Mm-hmm. It's just on loan to government. And then Article 1, Section 3 of the Missouri Constitution says that the people have the right to alter or abolish their constitution when it does harm to their liberty, to paraphrase it again. We're celebrating the 250th anniversary of the advent of America, right, of the United States. The Declaration of Independence talks about government existing at the consent of the governed.
Right.
And then several years later, when the Constitution was drafted, it says, we the people establish this Constitution.
Yes.
And so all of that is pointing back to the fact that an American republic is supposed to be about the fact that we no longer have an oligarchy or a monarchy. The people are in charge. And the tools for keeping the people in charge include things like electing representatives and sending them. Now, it's true that the founders didn't like mob rule. They didn't like the idea of tyranny of the majority. And that's why it's also consistent with the principles of a republic to say that you should have more than a 50% plus one vote.
I agree with all that. I'm pro-life. I know MRL likes Amendment 4. I'm pro-Second Amendment. I know there are a lot of people that argue that bad gun control amendments can come down in the IP process. But the reasons why I voted against Amendment 4 in the House are really just the whole discussion we had about 727, about the authoritarian structure of leadership, about how this process is driven by there's financial interest in the primary process, and that dictates these personality types. And to me, those are all reasons why we both need a functioning initiative petition process to be an accountability measure on it, and why you shouldn't have one standard for the legislature referring amendments to the people and a different standard for the people have their own amendments that they want to generate sua sponte.
Well, I'm glad that you mentioned that, because that's an element of Amendment 4 that people are missing. It's a double standard. So they want to the Amendment 4 will raise the bar for the initiative petition process so high that it'll have such a chilling effect that you won't see ordinary people submit petitions to do something like stopping private use eminent domain. I don't want to digress too much, but I think in our lifetime, the greatest affront to liberty that we've seen was the whole COVID experience. I call it COVID tyranny, when you have government saying you can't go to work, you can't worship, you've got to get a jab.
Right.
All of those kind of things. And
literally, what freedom did they not antagonize?
Yeah.
What freedom was left?
And the next question is what did the legislature do about it?
Right.
Nada. Almost nothing.
Tried to.
Yeah. Well, I don't know that it was much of a try. It was. You were there. I was there. It was pretty pitiful. The effort was pretty pitiful.
Some people tried. Yeah.
Yeah. But I think as a body and with leadership, it just didn't happen. And so sometimes there's times like with eminent domain, and we don't have time to go into the whole history of the Kelo opinion back in 2005 and what the legislature did and they didn't do, but they were neglectful. They neglected to do things to protect our liberty, and so when I think that when the legislature is unresponsive or they are oppressive, there needs to be a way for people to go around them. The whole idea of a constitutional republic is the powers in the hands of the people. But the constitutional part of that is that the Constitution is a fence around government. It's a fence or a wall, and the people have to have a way to strengthen that fence, build it taller, make it stronger, independent of the government. You shouldn't have to go ask government for permission to build a fence taller around them.
Yeah. So, and to be clear, I think ratification reform is needed. We should change the threshold for amendments to be ratified to the Constitution. However, the initiative petition process itself is a check on the legislative branch.
Right.
It's a check on the judicial branch. It's a check on the executive branch, because it gives the
government.
It's a check on all of Missouri government, that the people can say, this is unjust what they're doing. They are not listening to us. There is a break in the consent of the governed, and the consent of the governed can express itself by amending the Constitution through a spontaneous amendment brought by the people.
Right. I think that's exactly right. The initiative petition process, I kind of equate it to our right to bear arms. People that have thought about it, they realize that we don't have the right to bear arms because we like to break clay targets or ting steel targets or punch holes in paper or hunt. It is, to a certain extent, about protecting our family from marauding bands. But more than anything, we have the right to bear arms so that we can keep government in check.
Yeah.
And the threat of that, even though it's really almost never been used in America, the threat of that has had maybe more deterrent effect than we even realize it's had. But unfortunately, if we ever got to that point, it would not be pretty. I think, was it Obama that said, they have their AR-15s, but I've got my F-16s.
Yeah, Joe Biden said that too, right? Yeah. Right. That's pretty.
Was that Biden said that?
It's a pretty ugly thing to make mention of using the military to kill American citizens.
It is an ugly thing, but it was mentioned.
It was brought up, right?
Yeah.
That you're no match. But I think
so the initiative petition process, the ability of the people to make an end run around government, may keep us from ever having to shed blood. But it's the same principle. It's a tool to keep government in check. Now, what happens when you let people own guns? Some of them do stupid things. Yeah. Some of them do evil things. I mean, as evil as going into a school and killing kids. Mm-hmm. And that's probably, we haven't had that lately, I don't think, but it's probably going to happen again someday. And so what we see the left saying is that we've had this terrible thing happen, and then a knee-jerk reaction, they say, take away the guns. Well, that's what's happened with the initiative petition process. Some bad things have been done with the initiative petition process, and in a knee-jerk reaction, we've got Republicans saying, let's take away the people's check on government.
When, ironically, one of the only ways maybe to get the bad things out of the Constitution in the future might be an initiative petition process. We might need the initiative petition process to get abortion out of the Missouri Constitution.
That's exactly right.
To get sports betting, the regulatory marijuana things, that whatever you think substantively about marijuana, regulations like that don't belong in the Constitution, I don't think.
Well, the marijuana industry has now been embedded in the Constitution, and it's monopolistic privileges, and so now it's an over $1 billion industry. Right. So where do you think some of that $1 billion goes?
Back in a circle, right? Right,
in influencing the legislative process. So don't expect that $1 billion to let the legislature curtail them any.
To me, that a founding idea is all men are created equal, and we have these ways of expressing, of manifesting all men are created equal, And I think the right to bear arms is one of those things that, Samuel Colt made people equal,
Yeah,
right?
I was just thinking about that.
I was telling my boys that the other day because we're talking about Jefferson, and they said something, and I said, yeah, that's what, Samuel Colt made people equal. You could be as slow and feeble, and if you have a firearm, you're equally as defendable as the other person is with one. And that's a way of expressing that there's not a ruling class and a ruled class. Everybody can defend themselves.
Yeah, except my brother who shoots competition IDPA, and he's really good. He likes to win state championships.
We were watching Lincoln, where Thaddeus. Have you ever seen Lincoln? And Thaddeus Stevens' character gets up, and they're trying to get him to say that that people of different races are not equal because they're harkening back to the Declaration, and he says, "No, not, everybody's equal. You're an imbecile, but everybody's equal before God and the law." So I thought that was kind of interesting. Yeah. Anyway, but yeah. So
but if we might getting back to the double standard, I just handed you a piece of paper that lists all 50 states and what is needed to ratify amendments in each of the 50 states. But what I want to focus on is what the legislature has to do for them to propose an amendment to their state constitution. You'll notice all but 14 states have some kind of a supermajority requirement of their legislature before they propose an amendment. They have to have a 2/3 vote, 60% vote. Some of them, there's a few of them that have to have a simple majority, but they have to do it. They have to vote on it twice, like in 2 different legislative sessions. So 36 states, they recognize that the greatest threat to their constitution is really coming from their own legislature. And so they actually have the higher bar for the legislature, which is just the opposite of what Amendment 4 does, which has a higher bar for the people.
Right.
Now, another interesting fact to consider is that we see the people that are hawking Amendment 4, and they'll say we have this big fat Constitution. Now compare that to the U.S. Constitution, which is real thin. Well, they don't understand the basic principles of federalism, for one, because the federal government has less responsibility, so they should have a smaller Constitution. But the thing they don't consider is that 81% of the amendments in the Missouri Constitution since 1910, which is as long as we've had the IP process, were proposed by the legislature.
Right.
They complain that we have stupid stuff in there like bingo. I mean, that's an example they use. Well, there were 3 bingo amendments. Guess who proposed them?
The legislature.
The legislature, all 3 times.
Right.
Bingo in the Missouri Constitution. And there's more to it than that. I mean, there's a reason that there had to be an amendment for bingo. But the legislature should be our greatest fear. Now, Republicans, they look at the last 20 years and they say we've had the supermajority and all the bad stuff that's gone in the Constitution has come from the IP process. But before, when the Democrats controlled, you had guys like John Ashcroft, who was governor at the time and vetoed an IP trashing bill. And he said the initiative petition process is an important process for the people. And
it will be again when the Democrats take over the legislature.
It will be again. And so Amendment 4 is so incredibly short-sighted. It misunderstands the principles of a constitutional republic, and it misunderstands the history and the tentativeness of the rule of majority party right now.
Our next guests are here. So.
Okay. One more concern I have about it, and then I know we'll close up, is that why would we eliminate the people's ability to amend the Constitution and give it all to the legislature while we have abortion on demand in the Missouri Constitution? And so that another argument for me, and those are all arguments, here's an additional one. Until there's not abortion on demand in the Missouri Constitution, I'm not sure I'd be willing to take away the people's ability to amend the Constitution.
Well, I would never take away people's ability to amend the Constitution.
Right.
But what we do need to do, as you said earlier, we need to raise the threshold, but we need to raise it whether it's an initiative petition proposed amendment, a legislatively proposed amendment, or we haven't talked about it yet, a constitutional convention, which can replace the entire Constitution with one vote, and it would only take a simple majority. And that simple majority could come from the urban areas. Right. So Amendment 4 is not only bad in itself, but it's a lost opportunity to raise the bar on all 3 different ways that you can amend the Constitution. And that because it effectively kills the initiative petition process, that the legislature will never come back and raise the bar on themselves.
Correct. It'd be done.
Right.
It'd be done forever. That's
right. But I do think, and you've been there for the discussions, I do think we've found over the last few years when this has been on the forefront that we could get the legislature to raise the bar on themselves a reasonable amount if that's what it took to raise the bar on IP.
And in concert.
In concert,
a consistent
together.
standard.
Right. What's good for the goose should be good for the gander.
I'll make one point and then let you make a final point. I know politicians always make promises that they don't keep, but if there's ever a boondoggle of a constitutional convention, my recommendation will be that Ron Calzone goes, and you can participate in the convention as the expert. But yeah.
Well, I'm not sure that I'm qualified, but
who's more qualified?
I would want Dave Rowland there.
Oh,
okay, but I don't think that we could get so a constitutional convention would be manned by delegates,
right?
And there would be 34 delegates that are selected from the state state Senate districts, and then 15 at-large delegates. And so, what's that add up to? I don't know that we can find that many people that are really qualified. We don't have that many Madisons or Jeffersons in the state.
I guess you go to war with the army that you have, right? I mean, that's what we're doing now.
You do, but the thing is that there are good people that are supporting Amendment 4.
Sure, absolutely.
And there are good people that are supporting Amendment 5, which, by the way, I oppose as well for the same reason that I don't like Amendment 4, because I don't trust the rascals. Okay.
You have good reason not to, but it's a good point that good people have.
There's
good motives at different sides of the argument.
Right, good motives that want the same objectives that I think you and I want, but some of them have come to the fight late, and they don't have the perspective. I started what I'm doing when the Democrats were in control. I was here for the transition. Mm-hmm. I was here, when Sarah Steelman helped break the Senate stronghold, and so I have a longer term perspective, and so I'm not looking at just here and now like I think a lot of my activist and conservative friends are. So. I would be very much afraid for a constitutional convention at this point in time.
I'll give you one final word, and then we got our next guest here. Anything you want to say on your way out?
No, I guess all I want to say is that I hope that the next legislature takes a really hard look at the power structure of the House and the Senate, and they start returning power back to each individual rep and each individual senator, which in turn turns that power back to their constituents.
Right. Thanks very much, Ron Calzone.
Thank you.
And applause, entourage. The audience loved it. They're eating it up. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Bill.
All right. So now we're going to have our next guest coming in here shortly. In fact, I'll go and grab
get him. Okay, great. Yeah. Thanks for your time. Hey, Megan. Hi, Pat. Come on in and sit down. It's the show's been flying by. Yeah. We're on live right now. If you want to put your headphones on.
Yeah, I've been watching it.
Yeah, you've been listening to it.
Yeah.
What have you thought so far?
Good, very good.
Okay, what I'll do is I'll let you each introduce yourselves, and just give us a minute or so about yourselves, and then we'll talk about what's going on in the world. Does that sound good?
Yeah.
Okay, Pastor Pat, you want to start?
I'm Pastor Pat from St. James, Missouri. And I've been in the ministry for a long, long time. And that's my life. And I pastor out between St. James Exit and V Exit, or the Loves. I say Loves a lot because everybody can see and know about the truck stop there. And so I just do a variety of things. There's a lot of things I'm into. And a lot of things I do with ministry. So
yeah, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Megan?
Well, I guess I'm just a hometown girl. Grew up in Rolla, and my family's been in Phelps County for 5 generations. And I try to do as much as I possibly can in the community. I do a lot of stuff with the youth and sports and different things. So, yeah.
So you're involved in the organization with concerned moms, right?
Yep.
Can you tell us about it? Tell us your role in it. Tell us what you guys do.
So I'm the chapter leader for Moms for America, Phelps County Moms for America. And we basically our goal is to uplift moms and how important they are to the structure of families, and to teach people about the Constitution, and to create programs that help basically raise young patriots. And so we focus on a lot of those things, but then we also focus on local issues as well, which there's been a few that we've focused on and are still fighting. And so we haven't had a meeting in a while because everybody's busy with summer and kids. And
it's a bad time. Really, it's a bad time to hold an election in the summer.
Yeah,
everybody's gone or having ball games and stuff like that.
Yeah.
What are some of the issues locally you've been working on?
So some of the issues one of the big issues that we've been working on since last fall is inappropriate material that has been in the school district. And surprisingly, the more that you look into different school districts, you're most likely going to find some kind of sexually explicit books in the schools, which is crazy because you would think it would be the other way around. Maybe it's a one-off and there would be one book, but a lot of schools you're finding, like 70 books, 60 books in elementary school, picture books for, kids that are in kindergarten. And so
the law expressly forbids it too. The law expressly forbids explicit materials being furnished to minors or providing them to minors to access explicit materials. It's so yeah. Go ahead.
Well, and it's I do talk about this quite a bit, and so I have other communities reach out to me and say, "Hey, can you help us? Does our community have these books?" And usually I say, most likely they do. Even no matter how small they are. Most likely they do. And so we've been helping other communities because it's hard for people to make a stand on these issues. A lot of people are like, surely it's not that bad until they see it. And then once you see it, you can't unsee it. And so then you're like, okay, I have to do something, but I don't know what to do. And I want to make a stand. And so these other communities, our goal really is to get these other communities that keep reaching out for help and get them together and then, collaborate with them and make a bigger stand. And then, maybe go up to the Capitol and talk about these issues because something has to be done. I mean, these books, if my kids got a hold of they wouldn't know what to even, how to even
digest it
at all. And a lot of these books too, what I'll get from the school districts are stuff like, well, this creates an environment to where like they're more well informed of the things that are going on in the world. And so this makes them they're more empathetic. They're better people if they're exposed to these books. Which is crazy to me. That is
they're children, and there's so much of like that we've lost letting children be children and have a period of innocence.
Right.
It seems like you've made children had to have adult, not just the sexualization of children, and then having children be worried about things that adults should be worried about.
Right.
And I think that when we were growing up, at least to a certain extent, most kids could be kids for a while and have a childhood. And it seems like today in all different ways, we've just taken childhood and innocence away from all kids.
Right.
And it's like there's nowhere they can go to escape it. And you think they should be able to go to school where they're safe and they're not being exposed to stuff.
Right.
That's where they haven't been safe.
Yeah, there's a lot of ways that children are not safe in schools, and that's really, you talk to most parents, they agree with exactly what you're saying. It's unacceptable.
Right.
Children, go ahead.
A lot of the things that I see too is that the school districts will say, oh, well, this is a award-winning book. Well, it may be award-winning through the American Library Association, which if you look them up, you'll see, what agenda they're pushing. But just because it's award-winning doesn't mean it's appropriate.
Right.
And, something that I've went over a lot with the schools too is that, and they won't give me an answer. They don't even want to discuss this, but if, some of these books have the F word and multiple cuss words in the triple digits. So, 200 and 300 times. So if a book says the F word or, D word, talking about different, all of these things, what educational value does that have?
And I think there's something about like, is it, so if my 14-year-old or 15-year-old watches a rated R movie, which rated R movie, isn't that my call as the parent?
Right.
If that movie's okay, or there's value to it, or if they, whatever, it's up to me as a parent when my kids get to, with me experience certain stuff, and never that stuff. I don't mean explicit stuff ever. Right. I just mean like that there's the parents decide about, when the child's old and mature enough to whatever. And if the parents out of that process, the school district says, hey, here's a rated R book that little kids can read, shouldn't parents be able to say, my kid doesn't need to be exposed to that.
To be notified.
It's inappropriate. No, yeah, exactly.
I mean, when I was a kid, if there was a movie that they thought was a little risque, they would ask about it. Like I remember the movie Roots. They sent a letter home and was like, okay, would your child be able to watch this because, it's violent, and so.
I remember I was in school and The Simpsons came out and they were going to play an episode of The Simpsons that had to do with Edgar Allan Poe. And all the parents had to sign off on the children watching The Simpsons.
Yeah.
And I walked up and I said,
how it's changed now.
I said, my mom doesn't want me watching this at the time. Yeah. And I went out in the hallway and they played like an episode of The Simpsons. And because mom didn't, right? And my dad thought it was my dad didn't like shows where children were disrespectful.
Right. Yeah.
So we didn't watch those shows. And so I went in the hallway and waited, and then I came back in, and I said, and then when it was over, but anyway, goodness. That was how, at that time, it was. What now by today's standards, that cartoon is seen as tame, right?
Yeah,
compared to what kids are exposed to now, right?
Very tame.
Well, and so
relatively,
what I told the school, with the cuss words in the books, I said, so that's appropriate because their logic behind it was, it is sometimes appropriate to use that kind of language when you're depicting a story that, may be hard to depict. And so the author has to use those words. And so I gave the example. I said, okay, well, it is against school policy to use those words or to write those words or wear a t-shirt with those words. So if my son was to write an essay and it to be an amazing essay, but have some of these words, would he be in trouble? And they said, Miss Johnson, I don't want to talk about that. I'm not going to go there with you. And it's like, but wait a minute. So we have a double standard here. Like we can hand these books, to kids under basically like a secret. You keep this a secret. Don't depict anything that's in these books. Don't use the words that are in these books, but you're free to read them. And it's just, I don't know how we got here, but there are a lot of books in these schools. And like, again, schools that you would never even think would have.
And not only the language, but the pictures and everything.
The pictures. So that's, there are some of these books that it is a graphic comic book. And so it shows complete like sex acts, cartoon characters. And
to me, that's criminal. It should be criminal.
Right.
That's furnishing obscene materials to a minor is criminal.
Right.
There's a role there's an age appropriate biology lesson that can be taught. And then there's contributing toward and to me, it relates to the transgender movement. It relates to human trafficking. It relates to abuse of children. It relates to grooming of children. All those things that we just have allowed and said, oh, this is okay. The culture has it. When there's nobody saying that's a little kid.
Right.
Like,
where's the protection?
Where's the protecting a little kid? There's a little kid,
Well, and there's one book in particular where it had, because the darker these books go, then they start attacking Christianity. And so, and spinning a whole, like basically trying to not normalize a 2-parent household, and go in a different direction. But so there's one book in particular where it's graphic cartoon images and they are engaging in sex acts. And on the back of the wall, there's a poster that says something about, keep your hands off my body. And then another poster that says something about went to a pro-abortion rally and got this from some Christians, or it said something like demeaning towards Christianity. And it's like, you're planting that, like that's product placement. Right. Like what is going on here?
Yeah, you're changing the culture by you can reach the children, you can reach the future kind of thing. Change society.
Right. And it's like it's just in the background of the
And that's what has happened since the 60s. I have my whole story about that, which I won't go into now, but I remember sitting in my classroom when they announced that JFK had been shot, assassinated. And from that time on, things began to change. No prayer in the school. And then I found out later, as of course where we're at now, that even our history, we were used to, or at least I was, and I think JP and Heather and you, JP and you guys, you just, you remember more of that than the kids today. You remember quite a bit of it, but it's just, it started changing though. And then now we're to the point that the kids haven't even been taught history.
Yeah.
And they're not being taught prayer, and they're not being taught these different things. And so I think it's time for that to change and, to turn around.
Yeah.
We had a really good history teacher at St. James who her thing was, I'm not going to tell you how to think. I'm going to just present to you ideas and then you form your own opinion. But of course, reading between the tea leaves, I can see that, for example, with JFK, she completely does not believe the story that Oswald's the lone shooter, the whole thing. So she had us watch the JFK movie where they present the information. She said, you form your own opinion, but I'm going to expose you to what could be the other side. So that you can at least make an informed opinion. It was from there that wait a minute, this is a whole agenda thing. There's no way it happened the way they said it did. And ever since then, it was like, okay, not that I don't trust anything the government says, but I'm always looking to the other side. Yeah.
It does shape you. That's also saying like you had this experience as a student.
Yeah.
And there was just an idea.
Yeah.
And that changes the way you think about everything the rest of your life. So I can remember that. I can remember having a teacher say something or getting into an argument in the playground with other kids.
Yep.
And it just completely changed the way I thought about it when I was an adult. So, I mean, I think it's what we're also talking about is like how impressionable children are.
Or I remember even as a kid thinking, it really wouldn't be difficult for a group of people to run everything if they control the information.
Right.
Whoa, JP.
Yeah. So, yeah, I went there. Woo. And then I made the mistake of watching the Wag the Dog movie.
Yeah.
And then I just said, okay.
Oh, that's true. That's real.
Yep.
There's when newspaper articles come out, it's not coincidental why they're coming out when they're coming out. Yeah.
But yeah, it was from the 60s. Like I said, it just it started moving then. It started changing until we're where we're at today.
I just think there's so much darkness in the world. And we've talked about this before. There's just like evil. And how do I characterize evil? How do I know evil? It hates children,
Right.
It's like darkness and
hates life.
Hates life.
Yeah.
That's a good way to like talk about it. People are like, what's evil? What's good? That's how I'm like working on discerning its motivation. Hates children, hates life.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't want them to have a future. Take their identity away from them.
Goes after the most innocent.
Because God is future. He wants us to have an awesome future. And he is our future, but the evil fights that totally.
And the rabbi, you heard his segment. I thought that was fascinating.
Yes.
He was talking about how all the names meant.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what you're kind of saying too. God's the one that gave us our name, that gave us our identity. So this is who you are.
That's right.
And the world's just always just trying to take that away from you.
Mm-hmm.
I get that. People are like, am I saved? What's my future? But God's the one that gave your identity to you,
Mm-hmm.
And the world's always trying to take it away from you.
Right.
It's definitely some of these, going back to like the book situation, when you talk about darkness, a lot of these books, they claim, oh, well, it teaches kids to have empathy and, it shapes them to be better. That's the response I have gotten.
Yeah.
Like it shapes them to know what's out there and all of these things. But one book in particular talks about a young girl being kidnapped, and her kidnapper, like it goes into graphic detail of sexual abuse and physical abuse. I mean, horrible. And her abductor names her Alice, and there was an Alice before her, and that he killed. And she's praying for death through the whole book. And then eventually she dies. Like he kills her. There's no happy ending. There's no, she went through this traumatic thing and then she had an amazing life afterwards. No.
And that's at elementary school kids are reading that.
That is, that would be kids that are in, 12.
Yeah.
Reading that.
Little kid, it's right. And what you feed, what you feed in your mind is what you dwell on, you turn into.
What you see.
We say that all the time. What you take in.
What you take in is what you are.
Yeah. You are what you eat,
Yeah. So
what else? Okay. So you said you get a lot of moms and a lot of chapters together and you want to try to change some stuff.
Right.
So if you could go to Jeff City and change the law, what law would you change? What law would you introduce? What do you think we should do different?
I think focus on children. Focus on, because you always see where people are focused on legislation. I was looking at some bills that some people had in the last 6 months, and there was things like, make the state song this and that. And I'm like, why are we focused on that? Why are we focused on that? Like, I don't want to focus on that right now. I want to focus on kids. Why are we having these things? I mean, it's like this agenda is trying to infiltrate with kids everywhere. It's like, it's the school system where, I don't know if the school system necessarily knows that they know because it has been brought to their attention, but do they know how severe it is? I don't think they do in the moment. I think sometimes they just take books in because they're award winning and don't pay attention, or some of these organizations will send the books to the schools for free.
And it's sent to the library. And most teachers probably don't even, teachers aren't reading every book in the library.
They're
right?
not. When you have 30,000 books in there, they're not combing through every single one, but they need some kind of protocol to, some kind of policy to figure it out. Because it isn't up to us as parents to have to comb through everything. And that's what I've said too. It's not my duty. In the Rolla school, there's 77 books. I shouldn't have to comb through every single one.
Right.
I shouldn't. And honestly, I don't have the...
They're the ones being paid.
Right.
Yeah. So the responsibility's got to be on the institution and the school to make sure. The responsibility is on the person who owns the building, owns the organization, to say there aren't any obscene materials that kids can have access to.
So I think just having something that's very clear in the legislation that says, this is not okay, because you'll run across where the administration will say, well, that's not my description of what the legislation, my interpretation of it. So that, and then, it's not, again, there's all these other things that are coming after kids, the alleged family-friendly drag shows for kids and, the mutilation and all of those things. It is a agenda to attack the future, and it's heartbreaking. And so there's so much that it's where do you even begin? Because we've let it slide for so long.
I actually had a conversation with somebody about the drag show thing, and their statement was, I don't understand why you have a problem with us doing the shows with the kids. And I said, so I'll turn the question back to you. Why is it that you feel it's okay for you to be doing shows? Why is it the push on kids?
Yeah.
If it's not indoctrination?
Well,
and they didn't have a response to that.
Yeah, no. And that's the thing. It's if I didn't what is the purpose?
Yeah.
What is the purpose of having kids there? Most people wouldn't say, I want to have this party in essence and invite kids. Most adults would not be I'm going to invite kids to this. Unless, they're wanting to expose them to these things. And I don't know. It's heartbreaking.
Well, I remember you came to testify at the Capitol on a couple of bills, on Maisie's bill. And I think it was a big problem in Raleigh at the time, and there were a lot of families that were kind of like, hey, why are you inviting children to, an explicit show? Right. Yeah. So I'm glad that you did that. Thanks for standing up for those young people.
Absolutely. I mean, seeing the fact, because I went there because I'm like, let me go and see what's going on here. If I can't get this stopped, if my city says, this is going to go on, then I'm going to go and see what happens. And witnessing a, drag queen pull down his shirt, expose his fake breast, and have a child stick money into it was, it's insane. Right. Like, what adult would do that?
There's zero justifying
that. Yeah, and I don't
there's
care.
Zero defending that.
I don't care your sexual orientation. Like, don't do that. It has nothing to do with how you.
Yeah. Zero justifying that. Okay, I get. So JP's cueing the get out of here music.
Okay.
Pastor Pat, you want to say anything before we close? 1 minute, 30 seconds left.
No, I just I'm with all of this. I'm with helping her, plus doing ministry at my church, and I'm getting ready to do a Patriot Academy school at my church with Rick Green from Texas, and I'm also going to do a Flashpoint chapter, and this will include a lot of this that we're talking about, and just helping our nation.
Yeah.
Well, right before we go, we had JJ Bradshaw mention these two ladies put a great end to the show. So there you go from JJ Bradshaw.
That's great.
Thanks,
Meg,
JJ.
anything else? 15 seconds left.
Just if anybody wants to learn more about Moms for America, we have a Facebook page. It's Phelps County Moms for America.
Awesome. Well, I hope that flew by for me.
Yeah, it always does. And of course, Bill, thanks for hosting. And of course, we'll have Dave back next week. See you next Friday.
Where is Dave today?
8 a.m.
And there he is.